Ladies and gentlemen, today's episode of One Step Over the Line is another in the Marijuana Mercenaries series. And we have one of my first marijuana mercenaries, and that is a gentleman that goes back to the very beginnings of our industry, if you
Yeah,
will. Billy Hayes. I'm going to give you a little short intro to who Billy is. When
sure.
we were growing up and we were young smugglers and drug runners, a movie came out called Midnight Express.
Ooh,
And yeah, and Midnight Express was a story about a young American who was locked into a Turkish prison who got because he got caught smuggling about 2 kilos or a couple pounds, I think it was, of hash out of Turkey. And I'll tell you how,
really good hash. The
and boy, do
best
I love
hash.
good hash,
The
that
best
good black,
hash.
the good stuff we used to get.
Shoo.
So, Billy, I'm going to tell you something. I called a
Yeah.
couple friends of mine because I was really excited about having you on. And I asked my one friend who her husband and I, we all were doing smuggling and back in the 78 when we went to the movie together. And I
Yeah.
said, Patty, do you remember the movie Midnight Express? She goes, how can I forget it? And then I asked another friend of mine today who had called me, wished me a happy birthday. And he said, I said, do you remember the movie Midnight Express? He goes, yeah, I couldn't watch the whole thing.
Yeah,
So,
here.
right. So it was so powerful that I related it to when Jaws came out and nobody would go in the ocean in Florida for like the next 3 years. And
Jaws was the very first movie I saw after 5 years in prison. And the first movie they took me to was fucking Jaws.
are you
I haven't
crazy?
I haven't been able to swim in the ocean at night ever since. And I'm an ocean lifeguard. My favorite thing used to be to go down by the beach at night and get all tuned up and swim out in the
Yeah.
darkness. I can't even go in the water now.
Well, I have to tell you, watching so Midnight Express, I'll get the viewers to, if you haven't seen it, watch it. It's a story, like I said, about Billy being arrested and put in a Turkish prison. He, I think I'll tell you how powerful this, and I want to get into this.
Stay there, stay there. Keep talking. I'm going here. Get the light
So
on.
if you haven't seen the movie, it was written by Oliver Stone. It won. It didn't. It won a couple Academy Awards. The movie, right?
Yes, yeah, we got pretty lucky. Costumes and the script and the music. Giorgio Moroder did that incredible score and
Powerful.
nominated for some. Yeah, yeah.
I mean,
Giorgio's.
yeah, the music was all right. Again, let's go with that. Jaws. Doo 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 doo. I'm sorry, I'm not the good. But the music from Midnight Express still rings in my head, and the scenes. I remember a good friend of mine who's actually the one who made up the expression marijuana mercenary because he's
Uh-huh.
still running weed today, 50 years later. We
Woo!
were but he does it in Oregon where it's legal and all
Yeah,
that.
it's legal
But
now. Yeah,
yeah, but we were walking down the street about 5 or 6 years ago, and he
I'm
said, "Hey,
trying to get into that business these days.
well, I'll tell you, I'll introduce you to who I know." But
Yeah.
he looks at me and he says, "We're a couple of marijuana mercenaries," and that's how I came up with the name, the marijuana mercenary.
Oh God! And
Yeah.
this time, when the cop comes back up, he hits the hard plaques under my arms, and he freezes, and his eyes widen, and my heart stops. And this was truly the moment where I know my fate hangs in the balance right here. But prior to the first trip, where the guy sort of waved me on, and I went through after the first cop at the first under the first trip, thought about it, and he said, "No, okay, go ahead." This cop was freaked. I mean, they just blew up some jets out in the desert.
Yeah, he thinks
He
you could have plastic
he
explosives. He doesn't
jumps
know what.
back. He pulls his gun. He drops to one knee, screaming, "Bomb, bomb, bomb!" And this shaking gun is pressing into my stomach. And all the soldiers are bringing their rifles down. People are screaming and collapsing on the ground. And this guy starts to search me. And it takes him a moment to lift up my sweater. But I can see it. When he realizes it's not a bad bomb or wild explosive, it's some idiot out here smuggling hash. Like the grin on his face, he says, hashish, hashish. He pulls the gun from my stomach, so relieved, and all the soldiers put their rifles down, so relieved, and all the people are so relieved. Everybody's so relieved, but me,
But
because
let me
it was
ask
a
something.
big,
In
yeah,
Turkey at the time,
yeah.
what kind of crime is hash? I mean, obviously you can't. I mean, obviously you're in trouble, but is it a big? I mean, do you know if they're like, oh my God, it's like marijuana in 1970. You know, like I always say, people wonder how you got into the marijuana business. I go, look, in 1969, 1970, if you smoked a joint, bought a joint, or sold a joint, it was the same crime.
You were in the
going to
business.
jail.
Yeah, exactly. You were. Turkey had some difficult penalties for a while, but they also their penalties were being increased, and Richard fucking Nixon, the war on drugs was pressuring all the countries that we gave money to, which of course was everybody, to increase their drug penalties. And Turkey was
that
right
would have
at
been 1973.
Well, I know for me, I got busted in October of 1970.
So Nixon was okay, because 73 is when he started the DEA.
Well, but the war on drugs was
I'm not saying he wasn't that
right.
So let me preface what we're talking about.
Sure.
The American government in 1939, I think it was, made marijuana illegal. It was totally legal, and they came up with it was their political talking point and then they pushed the rest of the world to make marijuana and hashish and marijuana products illegal. They weren't frowned upon around the world. The American government decided, and so by 1970, you're back to being strip searched on an airport.
Also, this is still a plant that grows from the fucking ground that we have been using. The whole world has been using for 5,000 years. It's just that it got intermingled now with this political stuff. The right, Nixon, those people, yeah, they'll drink.
Company back in the day here, that was everybody bought. There was a knockoff of cigarettes. Very great boat. I had 2 of them. And the name of the boat company was Midnight Express.
Midnight Express,
which he got the name from your movie. I remember why. So Bob, my friend Bob, used to always look at me over the years and go, for some reason he'd go, Bastionada. And if you're aware, Bastionada, if I'm saying it right, was when they hung you upside down and broke your feet with a bat in the movie. That torture is called Bastionada, if I'm saying it right.
In Spain, I think it's called that. In Turkey, it's called falaka in the Middle East. And it's basically, they beat the bottom of your feet with this whippy stick, and it hurts like a mother. But it's kind of prevalent throughout the Middle East and in some of the Spanish countries too. Bastionada, yeah.
All right. So, but I still can hear Bob looking at me going, and when, of course, he said it, it's referring to the scene in the movie where you're being hung upside down by your feet over a pit.
Yeah.
So, interestingly, I did a little research before we made the call. I did not watch the movie again because I now, after all these years, have a bit of PTSD. I can't watch. I can read books like I will. And by the way, Billy's got a new book out. The first book was called Midnight Express, right?
Yeah.
What was the first book? And now there's a new book out called Letters from Prison, right? Tell us about
the first book was Midnight Express, and then 10 years later, I wrote Midnight Return, which was the bizarre book. Prison was weird, as you know, but then coming back into life, and I stepped off a plane at fucking Kennedy Airport. I've been in prison for 5 years. I stepped off a plane at Kennedy Airport. There were 100 reporters with lights and cameras. Billy, what's it feel like to be home? I don't know. I just got here. Haven't even seen my mom yet. It was a bizarre transition. I loved it, but it was a very bizarre transition from prison back into the whatever this real world is.
And I only did the longest stretch I ever did was 3 months, and I actually remember coming home. Imagine 3 months versus 5 years. And I was in a jail in Ohio where I always joke around. In the Midwest, they're so nice. They knock on the door and say, well, would you like this, fresh squeezed juice or the croissants? It wasn't like that, but they were decent to me. It was a decent jail. The first jail I was in, which you probably read about in my book, was more like where you were, where it was horrible. But the second jail was okay. But I remember I wasn't used to eating with a knife and fork. You eat with a spork. And my wife would ask me, what do you want to eat? I go, for 3 months, I haven't had my own choice. In the middle of the night, you don't get to go to a refrigerator and go midnight snacking in jail. You're lucky. I did read that you said, though, somewhere that the prison experience that they put in the movie was a little more dramatic than your experience. So let's talk about your experiences. Tell us about, and one last thing I want to preference.
Okay.
And we could talk about this, but years later, now I realize what I put my family through my 22 years of drug dealing and working for the DEA. And I have a friend of mine, and I told you this story via text. He remembers being at his home in Long Island, and now he's 62, so 63. So think how young he was.
Right.
And you were, and so he was maybe 12 years old at the time. And your mother knocking on his family door, begging his mother to sign a petition to get you out of jail. He remembers like it was yesterday, the door opening and your mother standing there, begging his mother to sign. So from that point, I'd like to hear how you got into Turkey, how you got into hash smuggling, what your prior drug stories were, what it was like being in prison, and your experiences. So now it's all Billy Hayes, guys.
Except you were going to keep bringing me back because I go crazy when I start thinking shit. I'll be way out on a line somewhere. So keep me focused if you can.
Okay.
But the reality is the worst part of jail for me was the pain that I put my family through. The fact that every day, if you back out of the driveway and you hit your mom and it breaks her leg, oh, it's terrible. But you take her to the hospital and they put a cast and she gets better every day. It never got better. In fact, it got worse for us because we never knew. My sentence, well, you read my book. Yeah, I went 14 months before I even had my first sentencing, but that wasn't a real sentence because they had all these extenuating circumstances. So I never knew what was going on, which was bad enough for me inside. But I was young. I was 23. I was healthy. I was an athlete. I used to do a lot of sports and martial arts and shit. I could deal with the stuff that people go, oh, that's a bad part of prison. No, I can deal with all that. The dirt and shit, I can deal with that. It's the fact that every day I know my mom goes to sleep. Fucking, I can't even say it now. 50 years later, I can barely say that. It goes to sleep because of what I did to her and my dad and my family. And I had the most wonderful family. The last thing I should have done was what I did because I wasn't fucking thinking about anybody but me. And life was easy. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, somebody asked me the other day, I was doing a podcast, were you a hustler? You weren't a gangster. And I wasn't a gangster. I was a kid from Jersey. I mean, I lived in Florida. My mother moved us to Florida to get us away from the drugs in 1973.
Good luck.
Nobody, yeah. I know, everybody laughs at that. But I was a
Marquette, but I wasn't anything either. I was a Marquette. I went to Marquette University journalism school. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to travel around the world, have adventures, and write about it like my hero, Jack London. I wanted to be just like Jack London. And one day, a friend of mine showed up, and he had come back from Istanbul, and he had a little chunk of hash hidden in his money belt. And it was the best hash we had ever smoked. And he says, it's cheap, it's easy. They sell it right on the street. I'm thinking about this. And I'm wandering around a local hospital where I work part-time as a child psychiatric aide. For some reason, I got a job there. And I'm walking around the hospital and I pass what is the cast room. And I see a doctor dipping a roll of plaster tape into water and wrapping it around this patient's broken leg. And an idea comes to me that changes my life. Someone said, how did you even think about doing a stupid hash shit? That was it. I saw the cast. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. And 2 weeks later, I was in Istanbul in a little hotel room, and I had 2 kilos of hash taped to my leg, and I'm dipping the plaster tape into water and wrapping around the hash, watching as this rough, bulky, but beautiful white cast take shape. I spent an interesting night smoking hash and watching my cast dry, and next day, I'm clomping across the Istanbul airport up to the customs guy who looks at my passport, glances down my cat, asks me how I broke my leg. I tell him, oh, climbing on those beautiful ruins down south near Izmir. And he says, he asked me for the doctor's note. The doctor's note. It's like, whoa. Yeah, I must have lost it down in Izmir. Do I have to go all the way back down there with this broken leg to get another note? You know those moments where your life is hanging right in the balance. This guy looks at me. He looks at the long line. He looks back at me. He stamps my passport, waves me through onto the plane. My heart is beating. The stewardess on the plane reseats me in first class so I can stretch out my cast leg. And soon I'm clomping across New York Airport, approaching U.S. Customs. And I look down and I notice a trail of little white flakes. I realize my cast is crumbling beneath me as I approach U.S. Customs. But they just stamped my passport and waved me through. Two places where I could have, should have, probably could have been busted.
And
And I
what year
didn't.
was that?
That was
1969.
April of 1969. That was my first trip. And
And remember, just so people have to understand, there was the drug scene was it was. I always talk of that's what. So we moved from New Jersey to New Orleans in 1969. I came of age at that. I was 12, and people have to understand free love. Woodstock.
I
flower
love
power.
the 60s, sex, drugs, rock and roll, free love, no AIDS. I love the 60s.
It was just coming of so you could go. Nobody was looking for this stuff at that time.
They weren't
Not
looking.
really.
No, not really, because it was just beginning. So I
Yes.
walked through and it worked. I did that, and then 6 months later, I did my second trip. I decided enough with the cast. But when I got home, yeah.
How much did you sell that? Hash was so people $5 a gram back then.
I'm trying to remember what I made. I had 2 kilos, and what I made eventually after expenses of flying and this stuff was about $5,000 profit, which doesn't seem like very much. Yeah, back then, but it's not a lot of money compared to the risk I'm taking. I should have done a lot more.
5,000. That's
5,000.
Right. $5,000 in 1969 was like 30,000, 40,000 today.
Yes, but that's still not a lot compared to the risk that I'm taking. But I wasn't caring, and I knew I could get away with it. 23.
You're invincible.
Totally invincible. I knew it was going to be. So I had a wonderful 6 months. I rode motorcycles across Europe, and I ran with the bulls in Pamplona, and I sold. I was a chess player. I used to take my chess set and open it up, and you lift out the frame where the pieces go. And I would take I'd cut these little gram chunks and tape them inside my chess set, and then put the top on and go to the park. And everybody would say, "Crazy's in the park." That was my nickname for some reason in college. Crazy's in the park. Yeah.
In America, or when you were in America, or
in New York, and then in Milwaukee, where I went to college at Marquette. So I got the hash, I brought it back, I went through New York, I went back to Marquette where I knew all my friends, and I'd sit in the park, and they would come and we'd play chess, and I'd take these little chunks of hash and I'd give them, and sell them. And it was like, people say, well, how do you sell that? You don't. You just sit there and, they come to you, or the word goes out. And everywhere I went, I had this hash to sell. And I was a very popular guy. I loved 1969.
Hey, hold on. Let me see. So you have a copy of my book. Right here it says, you don't sell drugs. You supply them like ammunition in a war. And that's what I tell people. Especially when you get bigger, like at my level, you're supporting an industry. But you don't sell drugs. People come and buy them from you.
It was wonderful. I spent 6 months having a wonderful time. And then in October of that year, I went back for a second run. But I know I'm not going to put the fucking cast on this time. This time I bought the hash from the same guy. I met a guy 2 or 3 people tried to rip me off to start with. What the play, they sell you bad stuff or stuff. I was walking down the street and I saw an old chess room and like a small little store, but it was all these old chess sets and shit. And there was an old guy inside, and I wandered in, and I loved chess. And we started to talk, and it turns out he played chess in Washington Square Park in New York back in the late. His family went through the Depression in the 30s or whatever it was, and they were rug dealers and they were having problems. They sent him as a 19-year-old kid to New York to get the rug business going because it was a bad world. And he played chess in Washington Square Park. And like when I heard that, I said, I played chess, and he loved me. We talked to him in Washington Square Park. Turns out his nephew, he has the best hash in Turkey. And when they say that, everybody says that. But this guy means it. They were Kurds. Kurds are like a group that's been included in the Ottoman Empire. They say they're not Turks. Yeah, they're Turks, but don't tell them that. They're Kurds. They live in the mountains in the east where the perfect conditions for growing this hash are. So they don't sell this to the tourists. They sell other stuff that's still incredibly good because it's all good there. Yeah. But I had this stuff. This guy personally told me, go down here. The taxi driver, look, tell him me that Mehmet says you get the best. So I taxi cab driver, I see him. I mentioned to him, and I said, I'll play chess with you with Mehmet, your uncle. And he says to tell you, I get the best. And he looked at me. He's like, all right. The guy took me to his house. I sat with his wife and his 2 little kids while him and his brother-in-law took the hash powder, which is what they bring it in. They bring it and beat it down. And they had this little bed thing. And I told them what I wanted to do. I wanted to strap it under my arms and on my waist. So they made me these plaques per the size I wanted so I could do it. They pressed it. We sat around drinking coffee and smoking weed. Actually smoking that hash powder is what we were smoking. And we did that for my first trip. I went back to the same guy on my second trip and told him, yeah, I'm going to do this and this. He gave it to me and I put it on my body and jumped on the Orient Express train out of Istanbul and took the train.
Let me ask you, was it brown hash or black hash?
It was sort of, more dark green, little brown, but more real dark. It was that incredible.
It was brown on the outside, but when you broke it open, it was a little greener.
A little greenish inside, and it had such a nice bend to it. Yeah. And, you know, I'm an easy hitter. The tiniest piece of this stuff, when I would have this stuff, anyway, that's a long story. So that's the second trip. 6 months later, third trip, I went back to Istanbul. I loved Istanbul. I loved the city, the adventure, the fact that, you know, I'm untouchable now. I used to stand at the Galata Bridge and gaze out across the blue Bosphorus at the misty hills of Asia, dreaming a young man's dreams of love and adventure. I even had a Turkish girlfriend while I was there. I loved Istanbul.
So you did 3 trips.
The third trip, I just taped it under my arms, pulled on my sweater, pulled on my jacket, put on my smile, and walked straight onto the plane and ran another load of hash to Manhattan. That's how stupid I was. I thought they wouldn't touch me. And 6 months later, in October of 1970, the PLO had just blown up some hijacked jets out in the Jordanian desert, beginning of all the airport security that now is just normal. And they didn't search anybody getting on planes back then. No. And now I show up whistling sweet. I've got 2 kilos of hash taped on my body, a couple in my shoes, a couple in my boots. I went out to the airport actually the day before, just a little reconnoiter to figure out what's going on these days. I walked in real casual. I got my hat on, my shades, just cool, watching people go through customs. You know, you used to be able to like go up in the observation decks at the airport and watch people get on the plane and wave goodbye. You can't do that now, but
I used to be able to meet them at the gate.
Yeah, I was doing that. I was going out there with that purpose, is to watch people till they actually get on the plane. And then I watched customs, and they had no metal detectors. Nobody was getting body searched at customs. I figured, piece of cake. And I head back to this English girl I'd been seeing in Istanbul, who was there studying belly dancing in exotic, erotic Istanbul. Right. Instead of going up on the observation deck, as I planned, and watching people till they actually got on the plane. Therein lies, once again, a lovely lady leading me astray. And this was astray a lot because the next day when I went out there, to the airport, we went through customs. We went through some customs, and then they took us downstairs. They had us sit in a downstairs room for a while, which is a little odd, but no problem. I'm through customs.
How many people? You were traveling by yourself, right?
Oh yeah. I did not want anybody. I didn't want anybody else to know. I didn't want to be dependent upon anyone else. I didn't want anybody else to have a chance to maybe screw it up. And I didn't want, if they fucked up, what do I do? Leave them? Abandon them? I can't do that. That makes it more real. A lot of logistical questions. I didn't want to have anybody but me because I trusted me. I knew I could never get touched. That's how dumb I was. And
23. That's how 23. We think.
Yeah.
We're invincible again.
And free flowing. And, and I'd already made 3 successful trips. So I'm like,
you had every reason to believe it was no big deal.
The fact that they put us on a bus instead of taking us out to we were in a downstairs room for a while again, which that's fine. And then they put us on a couple of old buses to take us out to the plane, which is a little odd, but again, no problem. I'm through customs. I'm feeling fine. James Bond is through customs. I'm feeling just fine. On the bus, this old lady, kindly old lady, she's talking to me and telling me about her grandson who's stationed here in the Air Force and how much she likes it in Istanbul. And I'm listening. Yeah, sure, this is great. And suddenly the bus stops and a Turkish cop steps on and says, women, stay, men, out, out. And I looked out the window for the first time after talking to the lady. There's Turkish soldiers surrounding the fucking plane. There's a long brown table set up in front of the boarding ramp with cops on both sides, where apparently they're going to search people getting on the plane. This is like, what?
And you're flipping out. Are you able, let me stop you. Are you able at this point, think back, to control your breathing, to get your thoughts together? Are you going into fight or flight mode, or are you going calm, just thinking, okay, I got this. Let me see what's going to
happen. The first thing I did, my first reaction was, this can't be happening to me. This can't be happening. While I'm at the airport, I'm thinking this can't be happening. So I dropped to my knees because I'm pretending. Where's my passport? I lost my passport. I just had to think. And the kindly old lady points at me and says, your passport's right there in your top pocket. It's like, thanks. And I take my passport. I'm out the door with the other men, and we're all funneling down towards this table. There's nowhere to go. I can't get back to the airport. I can't rip the shit off my body. All I can do is balls it out and bluff my way onto that fucking plane. So that's what I tried to do. So I had a backpack. I got through the men. Again, there's a bunch of guys doing this, and they're trying to all funnel to the table and whatever. And there's cops here and there's cops there, and soldiers here. And I just kind of like moved through the guys. And I took my yoga book, Light on Yoga, out of my shoulder bag, and then slid past the first cop. And I'm sidling past the second cop, putting my yoga book back into my bag as if I've already been searched. And I point like, first cop already got me. And I get one foot up in the air towards the boarding ramp. When this hand grabs my elbow, boy, and the other cop just happened to finish with the passenger. My cop catches his eye and he nods at me like, did you search this one? And the other cop shakes his head, no. And the grip on my elbow tightens as this nervous young cop out here looking for terrorists and realizing I just lied to him. And he pulls me aside a little bit and he gestures, lift your arms, which I do. And he starts to search me. And he hits the hard plaques under my arms. And he keeps going. And he hits the hard plaques taped to my stomach. And he keeps going down my legs. I find myself praying, please, Jesus, get me out of here. I will never do this shit again. But again, this is a Muslim country. I'm praying to the wrong. They'll smoke cigarettes, but not that fucking other weed, which for me, the hypocrisy of that blew my mind from the very beginning. It's like, hold on.
Right.
I'm watching these idiots smoke this. But, it was, you and me, and then people could complain about it as we did all we liked. It didn't make the difference. That was the fucking law. And if you break it, shoo, you got to deal with consequences. For me, once they arrested me, I went to court like for 14 months. I went to court before I got my first sentence, which was 4 years and 2 months. The problem is none of these things are like fixed. You get a sentence here, and then you have to wait for the high court in Ankara to give you the tasdik, the main paperwork, and it's got to come back, and it just gets complicated and a lot of bullshit. Meanwhile, my life is passing. 14 months, I'm there, and now I've got my first sentence.
Are you in jail now for 14 months?
I've been in jail from the first day I was in jail.
Right. So, there was no bonding out. There was no, you're an American citizen, you're in a foreign country. And we know.
Bail. And there was bail. No, they actually have bail in Turkish legal system. It's just that they don't give it, especially to foreigners, because you know where I'd be the day after bail. Yeah, they know that too. Which is one of the many ways I worked on getting escaped. I had so many plans. I had so many choices. I had people saying this, do that. If you can get bail, or a lawyer would say, I can get you bail. If he can get me out, good. COD. I got the cash. You get me out, I'll give you the cash. But until that, no, I'm not going to pay you to get me out, because I know people are ripping you off all the time, everywhere, on the inside, on the outside. The jailers rip you off. The lawyers rip you off. Everything's just that. So,
especially in those countries. I mean, listen,
and
I know in America, the whole thing was set up. I worked for the DEA for 2 years. Everything they told me was this. It's all about the money, asset seizures. As I say in my book, nobody was happier about the war on drugs than the cops, the politicians, and the lawyers. Yeah. I had a lawyer tell me when I was really young, I got in some trouble, but not real trouble. I forgot which lawyer of the multiple lawyers I had. I go, I don't know what to do. You know what he said to me, Billy? He goes, I keep doing what you're doing. You seem to make a lot of money at it. Just don't get caught. And I remember thinking as a 20-something-year-old kid, Are you kidding me? I'm telling you that I'm trying to get out of this business, and you're telling me to stay in it. Anyway, you know the story.
If
So
you
tell me
stay in it
more
long
about.
enough.
Tell me about your first experience in the Turkish prisons. Let us know about your emotions, what it was like to be locked up. How were you communicating with your mother and your family? Were you able to have phone calls? How painful was all that? Very, I'm sure.
Well, there were no phones, there were no emails, there were no mobile phone at all. Letters, handwritten letters, which would go out, wherever they go, and about once a week, the letters would from home would come to the door, and the guards would open a little slot in the door, and they put all these letters through, and you got one or you didn't get one. It was really hard to communicate because the writing, it's just in the Turkish postal system, and the fact that I would send letters out. I don't know if they've gotten them there. They send letters back to me discussing things, and they don't know if I'm getting them or I'm not. And it was very difficult, especially with me and my dad, who constantly had communications and would talk about the baseball games and how things going, and Willie Mays is on third base, meaning Willie Mays used to be an old baseball player famous for stealing home plate. So we would talk in metaphor all the time in our letters because we knew a censor would read them, but not really. There's 18, 19, 20 different nationalities of people in this prison. It's a lot of Turks, of course, and all kinds of foreigners, and then me and the foreigners, we were in one coach together. So you got a
How
whole
was
bunch
the
of
treatment in the jail? What was the jail like? I mean, I know the movie. If everybody watches the movie, it's brutal. But what was your first experiences, and how many jails were you in? I mean, let us know how the pain of all that, or the experience.
Well, I'll tell you, I got at the airport. I was busted, and then they took me from the airport, and some American cop or something, Texas guy, drove me from the airport to what was like a temporary first lockup, Sultanahmet jail in the city, which used to be like a really old fancy hotel, and that they turned it into a prison kind of thing. And I come in, and the cop Tex walks me in there, and we were going down, and I see up on the this lovely old place, all beat up now, but it must have been really nice at one point. I see up on the curving staircase 2 cops questioning a prisoner who's crying and bleeding from his mouth. It's like, oh, that's not a good sign. And he takes me down, and he signs me over, and then he leaves. And then this skinny little cop takes me up the stairs, past the still crying, bleeding prisoner, who he casually kicks. I'm not going to beat it, as he takes me to the captain's office. And again, I'm ready for anything. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen here. My guy is gone. He speaks English. These guys are gone. I don't speak much Turkish at all, even though I've been here a couple of times. And the captain turns out to be this terrific guy who speaks English, who introduces me to this other Turk, this really tough looking Turk in an expensive suit and handcuffs, who doesn't seem to be too concerned about being arrested. Captain says 60 kilos, talking to toughs. They got 60 kilos of his pot here. And he's just sitting there. This is one of those places where these guys do this all the time. Who bribed who? Didn't give the right bribe to somebody else. So now you got to take a fall. 2 months, 6 months. You paid the bribe. They played the game. And then that's why I say he wasn't caring. Yeah, he's going to lose 60 kilos. What does he care? And then they come in and they plop my 2 little kilos down next to it. And the captain laughs. And the Turk, the tough Turkey, he asked me something in Turkish. The captain says, he wants to know you scared. I said, scared? No, I'm not scared. I'm not scared. I said, I'm telling them, I'm frightened to death. And they both know it. I said, no, I'm not scared. They both just laughed because they know exactly where I'm at. I'm trying to be cool, but fuck me. And I'm thinking physically, when's what we're going to be happening. I'm lucky. I used to be an athlete. I played all the sports. I did martial arts in school and that kind of stuff. So I'm not too concerned, but I'm very concerned. What's going to happen next? I'm sort of being ready for whatever's next. They were nice enough, and these guys. We talked for a while, and next thing I know is they're driving me from down to the town. He wanted to know where I got the hash. I told him some bullshit story about 2 Turks down at the pudding shop. That was the big local hippie hangout in the day, people traveling east and west. So he wanted to get who these guys were. And I, of course, wanted to be cooperative because I just look at the guy bleeding and crying on the staircase. So we went down there. I made up some Turks. Actually, I made up in my mind because one of the first things I tried to do back at the first trip was buy some hash from some people down in the bazaar, and they ripped me off. And so I walked. I said, "We'll go down there," because if I saw this guy, I'd have fucking pointed to him just to
Right.
give
He
them
ripped
some.
you off.
Yes, because this fucking guy ripped me off. But I went back to confront him myself after I realized they'd sold me bad hash. I took it by my room, and they rolled up a thing, and we'd smoked it. And it was great because they put that, and they gave me a real good joint. And I got back to my room, and I opened it up, and I broke the bars, and they were like, just kind of like falling apart, the dirt and grass. So I went back to deal with this guy, and he saw me coming back, and him and his three friends kind of take the pose, and he opens his jacket, and there's a big pistol in his belt. And it's like, maybe I'll deal with this in a different way.
I've been there.
And I slink away. Of course you do. Like, what are you going to do? Fight the guy? So I slink away, and I'm pissed because I lost my first deal. But I went to a second deal, and eventually my chess player old man got me to his kid who had the best hash, the Kurdish hash that we loved. Where am I? I get lost talking about this shit.
No. Wow. So we're talking about the cops are taking you, trying to give them a little something, although you're not going to give them the old man and the kid.
Right. So they took me down there.
Some time. Yeah.
Took me down there. I was still out in the they got cops here and cops there. They're all watching me. I'm thinking I could make a break. They're all like he's thinking about making a break, and they're ready for me to do that. So I know I guess I'll wait. I'll find a better time. Took me 5 years, but I found a better time. So they take me back, and they put me down into the basement for a lockdown. It's the night now. I'm going to be locked down in this whole Sultan Ahmed place for the night. And this big old wooden door creaks open, and they shove me in, and I go stare into this dim, echoey room full of milling men, and I'm ready for anything. Again, I guess I wish I kept up my martial arts a little bit more, because now I'm scared. As a couple of kind of dirty, half filthy guys start moving through this gloom in my direction, and I'm wondering if I hit him, and I hear William, and I looked at it. He says, William, it's the Turk from upstairs in the captain's office with the 60 kilos who I'd met earlier. He's waving me over. He's holding court in a circle of guys in a blanket with a big feast of chicken and grapes and fruit, and I get a distinct whiff of hash. They're smoking hash. I'm in the police station, busted for hash, and they're smoking hash, which Tough passes to me. I take a hit. Why the fuck not? And I spent my first night in jail lying on this filthy stone floor in the vicinity of Tough and his friends, which kind of keeps the prowling hyenas at bay. We got newspapers. This is bad stuff, but at least it's not around the toilet over there.
Right, and you need a guy.
Oh God, yeah. You always have to find. Look, who's the worst guy in there? Who do I want to make my friends? Who do I want to deal with? Some of the concept is like, you find the baddest guy there and you just deal with him and fuck him up. No, not unless you have to, or you're forced to. But no, you can do better than that. So I usually
not
make
the concept.
I make friends.
Tell you what, in my first arrest in that shithole jail in Massachusetts that I talked about, I got lucky. The toughest guy in our cell block was my roommate. So you always take care of your cellie. You know what I mean?
Well, I also got lucky.
And he was good to have by my side because,
of course, because nobody's going to fuck with you if he's there. I also got lucky because that very night, the first night I was at the prison, they took me. Well, I got through that thing over there. I slept on the papers on the floor. The next day, soldiers came and they wrapped these cold chains around our wrists and secured the big. I've had handcuffs and those slippy things on. I don't like chains. There's something about chains that goes way back. It's like atavistic kind of. I hated those fucking chains. And they take about 10 of us and put us in the red prison van. And we chug across Istanbul. And I'm seeing light and sky out of these little window slits in the roof. But suddenly the van stops. And I can just see this towering gray wall topped off with tangles of barbed wire. This is Smuggle Cezaevi. Smuggle is a district of Istanbul. Cezaevi is Turkish for house of punishment, house of pain. It was built in like the late 50s with German construction, but German designs, but shoddy construction. It's kind of like falling apart, and it's old and dirty and run down and rusted, but rock solid and very formidable. And that's where I spent the first couple of years until I moved to little ones. And eventually, after 4 years, I got myself transferred to an island prison out in the Sea of Marmara.
But what
Yeah.
happened when you went? Hold on. So you went to court, right? Eventually.
Well, yes. So they took me to the prison, and I got to the prison, and I met a couple of the guys, and they had like, I don't know, 2,000 guys in here. A lot of long straight hallways, and then intersections in between, and little courtyards in between. No real big yard, like a lot of smaller courtyards in between, and. They took me down the hallway and opened the door, and I got to meet some of the guys that were there. And this was the tourist cell block. All the foreigners are kept in one place.
So I was going to ask you, were there any?
Yeah.
So there were other people that spoke English. Well, was there a language barrier, or most people in Turkey speak English, or there was somebody to translate?
Well, a lot of people speak English, but also I went into the cell block where there was all of these Europeans. Everybody in Europe speaks English. Exactly. Basically, everybody in the world except us, because they're so fucking uneducated here. We got one language, and that's it. USA. Yeah.
Let me say, in fairness, we're the country the size of Europe. So I always say that. I live in South Florida. I can't even speak Spanish. I mean, it's... my wife's Cuban. I mean, I really can't speak Spanish.
So it would help.
So egotistical that we think the world revolves around us. And I agree. I know that.
So I got in there, and I talked to the guys, and we talked, and they gave me a little soup, and the guy told me like what's going on. I had 4 kilos, and they're telling me, giving me the jailhouse lawyer telling me, well, it's got to be this or it's got to be that, and somebody else is telling me something else. But I'm eating the soup and have the break because I'm hungry, and I realize whenever I can get food in me from now on. Back in the day, I could go. I would get right now. If I'm going to have food, I'm going to eat it. I'm going to get as much in as I can. And we talked for a while, and there was lockdown time, and this Egyptian guy who's a prisoner, but he works with the guards and shit. He puts me in this bare, empty cell, and no blanket, a little skinny, stained mattress on a wood plank bed. It's the cell's about 12 feet long and just wider than my extended arms. Ooh, I don't even like to do that. And a little metal frame, wood plank bed with a little skinny, for me, that was really stained fucking mattress, and no blanket or nothing. And he's got his keys, and I said, phew, it's cold, man. You got a blanket? He says, yeah, tomorrow. I'm thinking it's fucking freezing. And I'm watching him, and he's got these this is back in the day. These are big rings of keys. These doors don't have buzzers. They have to pull them open. So I'm watching him, and he's clicking, and I see, I think he fucking gives up. I don't think my cell is really locked. I hear him jangle off. It's like, and then from the next cell, I hear, psst, and it's this big German guy, Popeye, who I was eating the dinner with when he was telling me what was about my sentence. And he was in the next cell, and he gives me a stick with a nail in the end of it. And he tells me, blankets, last cell. So I go down to the last cell, and it's empty, but I see blankets piled up. So I hook a blanket, and I hook another blanket. I go back to my cell, and I give Popeye a blanket because he got me here. I give him back his stick, close my door, curl up on my skimpy little mattress, and collapse into sleep. And the door slams open, and Amin is there. And he's yelling, he's screaming, he's grabbing my blanket. Again, I'm not real big, but I used to be very fast and nasty if I have to be. And I'm scared shitless of what's going on. All I do is bang. He's down. His nose is bleeding. Oh, fuck. He's screaming for the guards. They're rushing in. They're dragging me out. He's lying there. His nose is bleeding. They're dragging me out. I'm trying to explain to the guards in English, which they don't speak. He woke me up. He hit me first. All they know is, new guy, first night in a fight. Lesson needs to be taught. And fuck. The way they do it is they drag me down to the cellar and wrap that rope around my ankles, hold me up in the air, and this big bear of a guard with this whippy stick started beating the shit out of my feet. And I'm twisting and screaming, and he's hitting my hands, and I'm screaming. I thought they're killing me.
So that happened. The scene in the movie, the guard is this big burly guard.
Yeah.
Really. And the scene in the movie is that's not happened the first day in the movie. That's just fed in. But that happened to you the first day. Listen, it's been
first
a while.
Night. It was the first night. Yeah, it was the first night. I got locked in. They took me down the cellar, beat the shit out of my feet with the stick and my hands and stuff, and sent me back to the cell block. And I kind of like collapsed on my bed and then recovered. And guys could come in, and this one guy had some kind of cream stuff. He said, put this on you, it'll help your feet, because I'm like bruises on my hands from the stick, but my feet especially. That hurts like
Did you walk stick. After they do that?
Yeah, you don't wanna, but you gotta get from there to here. But it was fucked. And again, that wasn't a bad beating. That was just making a new fucking idiot tourist realize who runs things around here. And
let me ask you, what was the toy? Just because I have to know, because in the first jail I was in, they had just gotten flushing toilets. The jail I was in the first time, and I was only there a couple of weeks, but it was built in 1863. It looked like something out of the Wild Wild West television show. I mean, they didn't have flushing toilets. Before I got there, you had to shit and piss in a bucket and then walk the bucket down to a big cauldron when it got full and dump it.
I remember reading that.
Woo! And they just gotten the stainless steel combo model, which I thought was phenomenal.
Lovely, lovely.
Yeah, I want to get one for the guest bathroom.
Upgrade your life quite a bit, yes.
Yeah, but how was it? So they did have toilets and sinks and all that.
Again, we had 12 feet long, this wide. There was a hole in the floor in the back for our toilet, which you always have to keep a heavy can or a brick over it, keep the rats from scurrying up at night. They do anyway. And I discovered that if you chase a rat, it'll run. But if you corner a rat, it leaps right up into your fucking face. I don't like rats. It's hard to live with rats. I try and live and let be, but it's hard to live with rats.
So they had a hole in the ground. You got to shit it.
Yeah, oh yeah, you shit it, and then there's a little spigot on the wall, and you got a little bucket that you pour in, and you wipe your butt with whatever, and you use a little thing here, and then you pour the water down into the hole. Sometimes there's water. Sometimes there isn't water. Water comes on every morning, 7 o'clock or whenever the fuck it is, for about 20 minutes in that little sink in the back of my and all the other guys' cells. And you got buckets and things. You can fill them up, and a lot of casks with screw-on tops and plastic. So you fill up as much as you can, because the water's going to stop at some point, like 15, 20 minutes. And then you don't know when it's coming on. It's supposed to come every day. It doesn't. And then the big sink, the big cement sink in the kitchen, the hot water comes on at night. The water fills up. You divide 7 nights into 70, 80, 90 guys. You split it up. And that one night is your bath night. Maybe there's 7 other guys. Maybe there's 8. Maybe there's 9. And that's your bath night. And the hot water comes on, and you use plastic pitchers, pull them down into the sink, pour it over your head, do all up. Weird thing, you can't be naked in a Turkish prison. It's such a weird thing. You got to bathe in your underwear. It's like the first time I heard this is like, what? Bathe in my underwear? They're weird about homosexuality in Turkey. It's against the religion. They call it ayip, unclean, and against the law. So you can't. There's no prison sex that's not possibly can lead to possible penalties.
So we have to. You're not allowed to take your underwear. You have to bathe
in your underwear.
Now, again, because I only saw the movie 50 years ago, and just like I said, it imprints you. There is a scene in the movie where they say you had a homosexual relationship with another man. Is that correct? Am I right about that?
No, what they did is I had an affair for a couple of early months with this French guy, but he left, and I turned to masturbation, of course, and then later on to abstinence as part of this energy work I'm learning about in yoga and meditation. I'm fucking focusing on getting out of this place. That was part of it. But they had a scene in a shower where they were washing backs, which would happen now and then, but not very often, because again, you can't go further than that. If you want to or not, you can't do it. And then it leads to somebody might say something to a guard, hoping that they can get in good with this guard by mentioning, watch these guys at night. Because when you in your cell, there's a little thing, there's walkways on all the cells, and you hear those step treads. Yes, the count walks. And you'd find guards just up there in the top, staring down at you. I got stared at a lot in jail. So much. When I play poker now, sometimes these guys, especially some of these younger tough poker players, they like stare at me. I'm thinking, you have no idea what I've been stared at by. Jesus, I'm not going to worry about some young Canadian kid trying to bluff me out of a pot. Ooh, the stakes were way higher in other places.
Yeah.
But anyway, so the guards would do that. And there's a point to this, but I forgot what it was. The guards.
Well, you were saying about you were in jail, and there was they were very they didn't like anybody getting homosexual, obviously.
Right. It was literally it was a crime. So you had to be careful of what you did or how you did it, because it's against the law. But there's stuff going on. There's always stuff going on somewhere.
Always stuff going on.
Yeah, of course.
So the jail is usually it's a double-edged sword. I mean, they'll let some people get away with some things. It's nobody knows. No way of knowing what's really behind each door.
People on the inside are just like people on the outside. They'll get away with whatever they can. They'll try and do whatever they can. You can trust them as much as you can trust somebody out here. It's the same life, but just a little bit grittier, and the edges are tougher. And what I discovered early on is that actions have consequences. That happens out in the real world. You do something, there's a consequence, but out in the real world, that consequence can fade away. In jail, there's nowhere for it to fade. It goes here, and it bounces back, and it goes there, and it gets tighter and tighter. People get so crazy in jail. People were drinking coffee all day long, or tea all day long. People get wired on drinking tea all day long. After a while, I could watch guys. I was always a writer. I was a student of human nature. I read all these philosophy books.
Me too.
And I always wanted to be a writer. I'm thinking, well, here's my chance to do what I've always fucking said, is get these books written. So I had to force myself to write all these letters, which, I guess I wrote letters every day. I was in there like, I don't know.
To document.
1,500.
Funny. I'm going to tell you. So I grew up in New Jersey on a farm. But when I moved to New Orleans at 12, and started walking down in New Orleans is a great people watching, especially the French Quarter, right? Now you're going back to buildings built in the 1600s.
Right.
It's this freaky place. I remember one time walking on Bourbon Street and I'll never forget this, seeing these drunk two men and two women, couples older. I'm 13 or 14, they're 50 or 60. The guy gets onto Bourbon Street. He's drinking a Hurricane from Pat O'Brien's, drunk off his ass. He climbs on his knees in a $2,000 suit, let's say, kissing Bourbon Street, going Bourbon Street. I'm thinking to myself, my God, man, somebody just puked there, because Bourbon Street's just a sea of vomit and water and I never could not tell you what is growing up in New Orleans made me a people watcher and a student of human. Then moving to Florida, and Hollywood, Florida has a 2.5 mile boardwalk.
I've been there.
So watching
great place to watch people.
The Canadians and the Germans and the English, and we as kids we get to know where they're from by what color their socks are, how they're shaped, how their bodies are, how they're taught. Not just hearing that.
Right.
So I get it. So when you get locked into a confined area, then you really can sit there like you could really study the human nature, because human nature is a really interesting thing. We're a complex. I have an expression. I go, living ain't easy, and being a human. If living was easy, everybody would do it, and being a human ain't easy. That's what I say. And I don't know what animal is easier, but you know what I mean. 5 years in a prison, you really got a chance to hone your skills, let's say.
Well, for me, writing, again, I was at college, at journalism school. That's what I wanted to do. Always wanted to be a writer. I went on my trips and stuff to be a writer. I have notes from everywhere I went.
Wow,
I'd write at least a letter a day, if not more. And I was in prison for 1,500 and something day, 22 days or something. And so every day, letters would go out through the bars where I couldn't go. And it was my way of staying sane and making this useless time worth something, because I kept thinking I need to be stronger than I am to get out of here. I need to have my willpower way more strong if I'm going to make something of my life after this, which I just about destroyed my life. Yeah.
And you didn't know. So tell the listeners, you didn't know how long you were going to be in there, because it turns out they kept changing moving the bar, so to speak. The
Right.
bars were there, but the bar to get out wasn't there.
Legally, I actually got I was there for 14 months before I got my first sentence, which was 4 years and 2 months. But after you get a sentence, it has to get approved by different courts and the High Court in Ankara. So you never know until months and months and months later when the thing called a tasdik, which is the paper that says, okay, stamp, this is what you have, this is what your date is, this is when you can go free. I never got that paper. They kept changing it. It would go from this to that. And there was always a question of who's going to do what. There's always a point in Turkey about amnesty. There's everybody's always talking amnesty. It's going to, I heard it from the first day I got there. It's coming soon, which people come out, the politicians would come on the news and say, we will soon have all of the prisoners will be home in a warm nest. All the guys go crazy in jail because they believe that shit. I did too, because I wanted to so bad to believe it. But after a year and after 2 years and after 3 years, I didn't believe it anymore. And I needed to get out of here. And to get out of here, I needed to change this environment where I was.
Let me ask you.
Yeah.
Before you go there. So just so I know, because remember, a lot of people haven't been in jail. I haven't been to prison. I've only done short time. But they always say, if you can do the first 2 weeks, you can do the whole bit. And you and I talked about the line in my book where it says, it's a lot hard. I forgot how I worded it.
It's a lot harder. No, it's not as hard going to sleep in jail as it is waking up in jail.
Yeah, because for me, I would go to sleep at night and start dreaming about snow skiing and my little 1-year-old daughter and being home and my family. And then at 5 a.m, they turn on the bright light and you wake up and you realize, oh, fuck, I'm still in jail.
I'm still in jail. I know. That was really one of the more difficult transitions for me to deal with, is to come out of because I'm always dreaming, I'm out and I'm free, whatever. And then to wake up and realize, oh, fuck, I'm still in jail.
Yeah.
After a while, that sort of faded. And even if I was dreaming I was free, it didn't catch me anymore in the morning, because prison was my reality. The outside world was a long gone dream.
Were there radios? Were there television? Was there any news that you could get? Was there anything coming in? Did they give you books to read? Was there anything else you could do?
Oh yeah. Books constantly. You could get books back and forth. Every couple of months, something. The guards would come in the morning, bang, 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 and clear everything out and do controls and search everything and take a bunch of the books. We discovered later on, 2-3 years after I got there, that a lot of these books that they took away from all of us were being sold in the secondhand bazaar in Istanbul. So the guards took them out and sold them out there. But we could get books, and people had little black transistor, about this big transistor radios back then.
Little radios with the
which was, it was okay for those who had them, but every different channel and, papa music here and something Oriental there. And after a while, one of the first things I had my folks mail me, which, oh man, I put them through so much. Mail me was Air Force earplugs.
Yeah.
I see your head, but I can't hear you talking, which saved me in jail.
Yeah, because the noise in jail is astronomical.
Having
goes to sleep at night. I
could go to sleep at night after a while and sleep and go off. But I had certain sounds in my head, which is the sound of these big key clicking in the downstairs lock was like a real distinct clang. And then of the door opening, no matter how asleep I was, that would get me right up and out, because after lockdown at night, people shouldn't be coming in and out. Hardly ever happen. Usually it's not good news that all the guards are coming in for some reason. We had a lot of late night controls and our courtyard, again, which it's, what was it? 14 by 36, I believe, paces around this rectangular courtyard that we had. But we shared this yard with the other cell block who was facing us. The other cell block were kids, like 10, 12, 13, 15-year-old kids who are locked up in here. They usually put the kids and the tourists opposite, because we're not as much of a threat to the kids. We have money and stuff and help them. And they, as kids, aren't as much of a threat to us. But these kids,
They put
how,
kids in
how are they
jail.
going to get through? Like these kids, like they're in here for, pickpocketing, stealing, and rape and murder. And then, the one kid who ran the kid's cell block when I first got there, the Shaban Topus, is a really muscle builder kind of guy. And he murdered his sister because she was out prostituting to support the family. I mean, they had other kids and smaller kids.
Disrespected the family.
That she disrespected the family, and this kid murdered his sister, got thrown in here, and everybody in the jail called him Aslan, which is Turkish for a lion. Aslan. Because he did what he did. How is this kid going to grow up with any kind of head that's going to deal with humanity when he's getting praised for murdering his sister? These were the guys we had opposite of. I actually made friends the first day with Shaban. With this kid that they called out, because I knew he ran the kid's cell block, and the guards respected this kid. Actually, the guards they wouldn't push him. They wouldn't fuck with him though. The guards fuck with everybody because they get away. They wouldn't fuck with this kid. It's like, whoa. So I made friends with him right away. Yeah.
So let's talk about this because I find it, like I always tell the story when people ask me, well, what was your story? I always say, when we started selling drugs in 1977, let's say when I moved to Florida, 73 is when I really started selling, in 74, I started figuring out to sell, it was happening. In the early 70s, I would just sell enough to get some, to sell some, to keep a little. By 73, 74, I was making a business out of it. Yeah. But and I was 16, 17. And I always said, when we turned 18, we all thought we would quit, either go to college, go to the military, or get a job, because you went from sheriff's boys ranch, from juvie at 18, you went to real prison, which would be Rayford. But in that society at that time, you're saying they were all, because now, look, you and I know, now they're locking up 16-year-old kids, 15-year-old kids. It's in America. But you're saying in Turkey, they were locking up 8, 10.
They had these kids again.
So what
they put them opposite us.
Yeah. So what happens is, what I always say is, there's no rehabilitation really in state and prisons. You're building better prisoners.
Yes.
You're taking these kids, and they're going to be. You and I are now mature men. We understand with the brain and all that. These kids' brains aren't even developed. That kid, the lion, was never not going to be in the prison system.
Right.
He was never going to come out and be a member of society. What I learned working for the DEA or around is that they have term. One term is a citizen. That means if this guy, he's done a crime, if he does his time, he can come out, be rehabilitated, and go out and be a member of society. So they're going to treat you different than a mutt. A mutt is a guy that's never going to be repatriated, that should be locked up for life, and they're going to keep giving him more time to keep him, because it's sad, but that's the truth. The prison system isn't meant to rehabilitate for the most.
I can understand a lot of. We didn't either. Turkish was they throw you in, lock you up, and bring you out. Nobody's trying to fuck with your head. But I never understood. I understand violence, and I understand lust and anger and all that kind of stuff. I never understood cruelty. Yeah. And there's some cruel guys. People. And I can't fathom that. I'll fight with people. I'll do whatever. I'll defend myself. I have to, but just being cruel. And there were some guys who just enjoyed being cruel. Some of them, unfortunately, were the guards, the bad guards. Most of the guys just doing a fucking job, making hardly anything. They're in for 12 hours. They're off for 12 hours. They got family support. They're in and among the same fucking violence that we are. But the guards, the badass guards, some of those guys, they need to present, and they need you to be. When this guard would walk into the hall, and everybody would go into that POW stance where your hands are down, you're down, your head is down, and you're praying. This guy just keeps moving and doesn't stop in front of you, because if he stops in front of you,
well, remember, no animal is cruel to another animal. There's no lion that purposely tortures or hurts another animal. They eat it or they kill. Humans are one of the only animal that actually inflict cruelty for that I know of, for the purpose of joy or for being cruel.
I agree. Yeah. Those guys scare me. The people who they don't care about other human beings. They just And so I in some ways, I said jokingly, but I actually totally mean it. Getting arrested and sentenced to life in a Turkish prison was the worst and the best thing that ever happened to me. Again,
Yeah.
it forced me to grow up. It got all my books published. It was I needed to learn a lot of shit that I was not going to learn running full speed ahead like I was before I smashed up into the prison wall. And then there were a lot of things internals that I needed to face and deal with and discover about myself. And then suddenly, after 5 years of all this hope and fear and up and down and despair and friends dying, one friend who came to help me escape was stabbed to death in his hotel room in Mannheim, Germany. That was probably the low point of my life because
So
he was
tell me,
coming.
how is he going to help you? Tell us. Let's talk. That's
I tried a bunch of escape attempts. One of them was this place called Bakırköy Mental
Let me
Hospital.
go back.
Yeah.
You were sentenced to 14. How did you get
4
life in
years.
prison? Tell us. 4 years.
I was sentenced to 4 years, 2 months. That's 50 months, 50. From that point on, my sentence supposedly was ticking down towards free date. But again,
Right.
I don't have my tasdik. I don't have that piece of paper from Ankara that makes that official. There were lots of talks about amnesty coming. And they say,
Right.
well, there's going to be a 7-year amnesty, going to be a 5-year amnesty. Well, that would come and I would apply to people, but it wouldn't apply to me because I don't have my fucking really official sentence yet. So we were constantly had lawyers dealing with people in Ankara and the American consul talking to people and trying to find out where is my sentence and what's going to happen. And they were trying to do a prisoner exchange treaty. They've actually finished up something called the like an international prisoner exchange treaty. They were working on it when I was in jail. Well, they have that now. They were working on that for me. So that was one of the things, that one of the many trains on all the tracks. I got all these trains running, Midnight Express. I got one of these trains on the outside track. That's the American consul bringing me home, transferring me back. All that shit was like, it could happen. The people were helping me. People were working for it. So like, I can't just write it off. But I can't accept it either because that would make me even more fucking crazy. Everything
exactly.
told me
So
that could happen. And I got my family dealing with this stuff just like me at home.
So I want to go back to a little bit. Yeah. Stay with me on where you're at. But so your mother you had how many kids in your family?
I had a younger brother, 3 years younger than me, and a younger sister, 9 years younger than me.
So you're the oldest. And your father, what did he do for a living?
My dad started working at the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company in Manhattan when he was 17 years old, and he worked there for the next 42 years, moving up the ladder. Talk about steady. His integrity is without question. He's real smart. He worked and worked. He's the guy that everybody in all the family would come to when there's a problem. Like, what should we do? What should we do, Bill? And he's logical and so on. And now,
and your mom, did she work? No,
my mom was a secretary back in World War II, and she was typing stuff. And she saw this sailor with his hat on and his blue uniform come in downtown in New York, come into the place, and she said, "That's the guy." And they ended up being together for the next 50, 60 years.
So back then,
people stayed together.
So yes, and mothers stayed home with their kids. Most of the people didn't work back then, single income. But so here you are, you're living in Long Island, right?
Right.
I know that because again, my friend Todd, who I'll see tonight, tells the story about your mother knocking on the door trying to get a
we're back around to that. Yes, it does. They went out and did that to try and get sympathy, and we had a couple of Long Island politicians doing stuff. So they hired a plane to run a banner along the beach saying "Free Billy Hayes." Yep. I saw a picture of that a month later. I fell off my bed laughing when somebody in the mail thing said, "Look at this on the beach." I used to lifeguard on that fucking beach. There's Free Billy Hayes with the plane right above it.
So that's again the dichotomy we talked about earlier about my father had passed when I was 13, so he wasn't around for all this. But my older brother is similar to your father. He's right now he's a double Ivy. He's alive. He's a double Ivy League graduate. He worked for MetLife for a period of time as a lawyer in MetLife. He used to hang out with Snoopy, right, in New York, in downtown Manhattan. I've been to the MetLife building. I've had lunch there in the room.
Yes, I love the luncheons there.
They had great lunch, right? They had a full buffet. So again, here's my older brother as an example to your father. So straight-laced, didn't drink his first year of law school, they drink champagne. He wasn't 21, so he wouldn't drink the champagne. He wasn't old enough to drink it. Looking back at my life, what I put my younger brother and I were, wild men together. But my older brother, he was, again, a little older, so he was not part of that early drug culture thing. Never did drugs. He'll have a glass of wine at this point in life. But thinking about what I was putting my mother, who was a single mom, with lost her husband, and my little brother came to both jails to bond me out and to help me and to visit me. And, we look back and I go, I have to apologize. And my mother has since passed. Her and my stepfather both died of COVID in the nursing home. So I never got a chance really to click enough, because when you write the book, and I wrote my book, a couple of years ago, I realized, what the fuck was I thinking? I never got a chance to go back and tell my mom, because when you write, as you know, all of a sudden it all comes to clear light about your actions are now on page, and you read it and you realize it's an epiphany kind of, right? And because when you're running and gunning, and then of course I've developed PTSD, so I don't watch movies and I read books, but if I tried to watch Midnight Express again, it would be very difficult for me.
I can't watch it again.
I did click on the trailer where it shows you getting out of the jail and running, opening the door. Of course, it's not what really happened. No. So you're in jail and you don't know you're getting out, and that's a horrible feeling, because you just don't know what. And I'll tell you something interesting about the guards you talk about. In Ohio, there was a guard, and I'm not a thug. I mean, there's these kids in there. The jails are full in America of black and brown kids, crack dealers. It's murderers. One guy, my one cellmate, had stabbed his Jose, the tough guy, that was my cellmate in the first jail, had stabbed his, not this funny, but stabbed his pregnant wife 7 times in the stomach. And I say in the book how he told me, one day we'll be a family again. And I thought, she's a really understanding woman. But the guy I related to most in the second jail was Bill, the guard, because I'm going back to what you mentioned. And I didn't relate to the prisoners that as much, but I related to Bill, because Bill was a guy like me. He had a house, he had a family, he would go home at night. And Bill and I were talking one time, or one of the other guards, and I said, listen, I'll get out of here someday. You're stuck here because and I wasn't being mean, I was being pragmatic. You're stuck, you're in a small town. Your industry is this jail, and you're on your pension, and you're going to do your 20 years or 25 years as a prison guard. I will eventually get out. Now, that was before they handed me my indictment, and I realized I was looking at 25 years for RICO. But going back to you, I'm just saying, I understood where you're coming from when you're talking about the guards. There's guards that you just go, I could be this guy's friend if we weren't on opposite sides of this. And then, so tell me more.
I made friends with the guards who I needed to have my friend, or at least not my enemy. You don't want to make enemies in jail. No. In jail, friends are, you don't fuck with me, I don't fuck with you, we're friends. And that's what I did. I used to always joke around at lunch, because we were in a 24-hour lockdown in Ohio, well, in both jails. So they would bring the food into the common area, and everybody was so polite. Are you done with the sugar? Yeah, pass the salt. Like, nobody wants this stuff. We're going to eat 3 meals a day. Let's not fuck this up. You couldn't be nicer. Of course, they gave us coffee that was decaffeinated. They weren't doing the same thing as. But so tell us more about your now. About let me go back to.
You don't know how long you're going to get.
I don't know how long I'm going to get. I'm counting the days. My parents are counting the days, because we're thinking I'm supposed to go free on this date. And, after a while, I thought, yes, it'll come. And I had a big calendar, and I'm crossing out days. After years, I'm crossing out days. And it felt so good. 56, 55, 54 days prior to going free, the American Consul shows up for an unexpected visit. And I'm thinking, first thing is, the Turks will let me out early. This is great. Until I see his face. And then I know, bad news. I'm worried somebody at home. Somebody hurt, somebody sick. Bad news for sure. Until he tells me that the High Court in Ankara responding to the war on drugs and pressure in Turkey into increasing the penalty, has rejected my original 4-year, 2-month sentence, and now I will be retried and sentenced to life in prison. It's like,
oh my God.
that's what I said. Oh, what?
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, I'm in the courtroom. My dad's standing behind me in the courtroom. The lawyers are speaking. The judges are speaking. The judge actually, the
Oh,
same
so
judge.
your parents flew over to Turkey.
My dad, not my
How
mom.
many
We
times
didn't.
did he come back and forth? Just this one, or you've been there for
No,
four and
he
a half
was
years
there. He
now?
was there after about the first week. I got busted. It took a while for them to find out and call him, and then he set stuff up. And then he came over and he stayed for about a week, and he hooked up with some lawyers, which
I know
turned
the
out to be
drill.
not a good thing, but it was what it was, you know.
Yeah, they try. Yeah.
Yeah. All I know is, you know, I know my dad's heart, and I know he's real smart, but he hasn't been out among these guys. He hasn't
No,
dealt with
he's not
this kind of
streetwise.
stuff going down. He learned. Unfortunately, I forced him to learn, which
Yeah.
and my mom had to just deal with. You know, everybody, she goes to bingo 2 or 3 times a week, and everybody asks
How's
her about
Billy?
how's Billy. Like,
Yeah.
breaks her heart. Fuck, I can't even talk about that shit.
I'm sorry.
So I no, it's good. I've been talking about it forever. I did a one-man show for 7 years around the
I
world
heard.
that stopped and talk. Some of the stuff I'm telling you right now is literally, I could take up my script, and I know it's the words I use in the script, because the words in the script are the words I used to answer the questions that people kept asking me, and that's how I ended up writing this one-man show. Which people say, well, how the fuck did you decide to do this, and what was it like when you did that, and did you really escape off the? And I'd have to explain it. And, you know, and a bunch of my friends said, why don't you write a one-man show about that? I said, I don't want to write this. People have got to sick the fucking death hearing about Billy Hayes, all this Midnight Express bullshit. I don't want to write about that. Mostly it was my own insecurity, actually. But then one of my friends said, you know, you get invited to these parties, they get you all stoned, and they get you talking about the shit anyway. Why don't you write it? And I said, you know what? Fuck that. It was just my own fear of whatever. And I started to write it. And it took a couple of years, but it was such a good catharsis thing
Well,
to
right.
have.
It's
And then
like
I
I
had
say about the book. It cleaned me out a little bit. But let me
it
ask you
so
something.
cleaned it out. Yeah.
So I want to go back into the jail,
Yeah.
but I want to ask you, since we're here.
Yeah.
I know you do get out eventually because you're sitting here talking to us, and you were able to, you know, make a movie and all that.
Right.
When you got out of jail, and we're obviously going to go back into jail because I want to hear how you got out of jail. I want you to, at some point, I guess we'll do it at some point towards the end, but tell us what your life was like when you got out, when you got off that plane, the 100 reporters, and what happened. But let's go back, because I got to know how you escaped. You found out you were going to get 30 life in prison.
Yeah. Life in prison,
I
which
can imagine after 5 years of uncertainty, and uncertainty is the killer. And
Right.
then,
oh,
you
was
know,
it ever?
you've learned to live within the system. You've learned to find ways to get food that was probably, you know, you learn all the tricks
Sure.
and who to befriend and who to avoid, and all the you know. And now you find out you've gotten life. You've got to be devastated. And you said you kept trying to escape. And tell me what happened to the guy that came to break. Do you have time to talk about some of the escape attempts you tried to do?
I have all the time in the day. It's my day here. I don't want to waste your time. You got to make a show out of this. Well, I'll ramble forever. So
Billy,
would you
we
want
could
me
do
to
5
stop? Tell
shows.
me. Well,
You don't understand. Having you on my channel is, from a guy that grew up as a drug dealer, seeing that first movie, walking out shaking, going, you know, like my friend Patty said, didn't we kind of rethink what we were doing after going to the movie? And by the way, people have to understand, it was Oliver Stone's first script, right? Wasn't it one of his first movies?
one of his very first scripts.
Yeah. And I know Hollywood, so selling a script, getting a book made, doing this stuff is virtually impossible in today's world. Obviously,
In
you pulled it off.
today's world. For
What
me,
was it like when you heard that you got life? And tell me about some of the escape attempts. Were they prior to you finding out you got life?
oh yeah. Prior to that, I had a couple of escape attempts. I had one where I got sent to a mental hospital because there's a clause in the Turkish law that says if you're judged to be insane, criminally insane under the law, they can't keep you in prison. But if you're that crazy, they don't let you out on the street. They put you in this madhouse. But I knew this madhouse. It was called Bakırköy. It was like it was a barracks for the Sultan's Janissary troops back during the Ottoman Empire. It was like really old and beat up, and the walls are crumbled. And they had it full, criminally insane. You gotta be a pretty badass to be a criminal. You've done something.
Most desperate to go. You're gonna
criminally go insane shit.
Yeah.
You gotta go way over the line. That's what this place was for. But I knew if I could get in there, I could convince these doctors that I was crazy enough that I could work an escape plan, because I'd been there. I saw the walls around it. They were all crumbly. I climbed like a squirrel. I could get up over any one of these walls anywhere. Yeah, but I needed somebody on the outside with a car and clothes and money and a passport, and somebody I can trust. Well, and the only guy I could trust is my friend Norman, back in who I grew up with here on Long Island and stuff. And he was in Alaska working the fishing boats, making money working the fishing boat. But he was a poet.
A friend that did the same thing.
He wanted to come when it came down to where I needed him. Not at the beginning, we tried other stuff, but when I really needed him to come and bring me the stuff I need and drive in there, and I'll climb the wall and then we'll scoot away. He was ready for it. He said when and where. He was like, it was for him. It was like the Count of Monte Cristo. It was a big adventure that he was on. He was a writer. He was a poet. He and I were so synced. If a streak went across the sky, there were 1,000 people. 998 of them would think something. Norman and I would think the same thing. I mean, we were in sync. So he's going to come and help me get out. So we wrote some letters. I had the plot. I had the plan. He came to the prison. We organized the bit. You can smuggle money and you can smuggle letters in and out of jail real easy. I mean, real easy. When you know how, you can do that. I used to send him letters detailing the stuff that we needed. It was still sort of in metaphor and codes and things, but it was talking about what we needed to do to get out and when I would do it. And now I'm arranging with the prison doctor. So I've gone to Bakırköy once already, spent 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks. I've been a lot of strange places in my life. Nothing compares to the basement of Bakırköy Mental Hospital. Walking this big wheel. In the movie, they do a very nice scene where they've got me walking around, Brad Davis walking around that wheel in the basement of the madhouse. That was one of the more accurate things. They went to an actual Turkish insane asylum. Alan Parker had to apologize for a lot of stuff that it ended up, and somebody's always going to be, whatever you do, there's going to be critics. And he had lots of badass critics. And he said, I hold for what it is. The only thing I might apologize for is I probably shouldn't have exploited the people in that mental hospital that I went to. But those people, you looked at them, it was a mental, that's what the guys looked like. They were insane, literally insane. And I went there to convince the doctors that I was insane. And most of my friends back in the day didn't think that it would take much for me to convince them I was insane, until I saw the competition and realized, holy shit. But by the end of 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, man, I needed to get out of here, because it was the insanity was just getting on me. And one day I heard, William. I was down walking the wheel, and I heard, William, Çabuk gelsene. And that's me. And I go up the stairs, and they've come and they're taking me away, and they put the chains on my wrist and put me in the red prison and take me back to smuggle prison, which feels like a 4-star hotel after fucking Bakırköy. And I don't get a crazy report, but I know with the right bribe to the prison doctor, my buddy, they can send me back to Bakırköy. And this is where I need my friend outside with the car and clothes and money and a passport.
Yeah, well, so I was going to say, you don't have to. So, and we're going to go into your escape, but people have to understand, it's not like you escape and now you're out with the money and then you can go to Nebraska. You're still in a foreign country. You still don't have documentation. You need a passport. You need visa. You're an American standing out like a sore thumb in a Turkish.
Right. And I had blonde hair and a blonde mustache at the time. Yeah.
Right. Fair skin.
There were a lot of factors that I needed to be dealing with in terms of this escape. But I had the main thing, which was, there was the desire. And once I get moving, you can kill me, but you're not putting me back in jail. I'm just not.
So how did your friend get killed in Germany? How did that happen? Is that the same guy we're speaking of?
Yeah.
Oh.
Norman, again,
You might
he
not
was
want to go there if you don't want to
no,
talk
no,
about
no.
it.
I go anywhere. I go anywhere. Norman was he was a poet, and he used to spout poetry to strange women on the street and actually lure them in. They loved hearing his poetry and stuff. And he was getting passports. He was getting cars because they do a lot of car transport between Germany and Turkey, and they're used to having cars moving back and forth. He was getting everything we needed for the escape. I was setting up with the prison doctor again for a return visit to Bakirkoy. So I needed to coordinate the timing on that.
Right.
And I was waiting for that, and we were ready for it. And then one day, a telegram. Remember when they used to have telegrams? A
Yep.
telegram came from my dad saying that Norman was found dead in his Mannheim hotel room with an army bayonet through his chest, which just, whew, he'd
Oh
been
my God.
He'd been messing with the wife. He'd written in his letters. He told me he was boffing the wife of this American Army sergeant from the German. That's Norman. What an idiot! But that was who he did. Women wouldn't leave him alone, and he ended up dead with a bayonet through his chest.
Did they
And,
ever charge the guy?
no, no. They said the German police instantly said it was suicide. He's got a 2 foot fucking bayonet in his chest, and I know this guy. He's the last guy in the world with the
Well, he was
commit
on a
suicide.
mission to save you. He wasn't going to kill
Yes,
himself. He didn't
yes,
go all the way to
exactly.
Germany to kill himself.
I knew that. Nobody asked me that. The German government, when his parents went there to deal with whatever was next, they said it was suicide. And then I wrote to his family and I said, it wasn't suicide. I know it wasn't. And they said it was what it was. He's buried. He's in the German.
I'm sorry, Billy.
It's all right.
I'm sorry.
It's good for me. It's therapy. He's in the German ground. All of this, by the way, all the stuff we're talking about here, I was writing back and forth to my family, my friends in Norman. All these letters that I wrote, I'm going to get it back around to my original book. People kept these letters. When I got home and I stepped off the plane to Kennedy, there was a press conference at the airport, and people were screaming and yelling. I was on all the newspapers, all the TVs, and people heard about it, and they all contacted because my family was by now, unfortunately, known since they'd done stuff and they'd been on TV.
Like I said,
And they asked if they wanted the letters, and they sent all my letters back to me, which in terms of writing a book, oh my God, what a wealth of material.
so funny you should say that. I wrote a bunch of letters. I wasn't in jail as long as you, and I didn't write as many because I was not as literate as you. I wasn't a trained writer. And I'll tell you 2 funny stories. So at one point, I'm writing letters, and my one cellmate was in there for beating up 5 cops, and they were giving him like Thorazine. He was he was an athlete, he was a basketball player, and they were giving him the pills. And Bill, the guard that I was friendly with, says, "We know John is trying to give his medication to the other prisoners. What they don't understand is it's not a drug, it's a cumulative drug. So they're not going to get high. And they think they're high. It's a placebo effect." So, but John could spell, and I'm a horrible speller. So I'm on the top bunk writing these letters, and I'm going, "John, how do you spell cellmate?" And and the guy was, he was able to spell. So I remember asking him how to spell. I go, "John, how do you spell schizophrenic?" And he's going, "Oh, S," and he's spelling it out. And I'm like,
I can't even spell that, goddamn.
But
I'm a writer.
I'm thinking, God, I hope he doesn't put the words together,
Schizophrenic cellmate. Yes.
Yeah, and I'll tell you a funny story. One day I'm sitting on my top bunk, and John jumps up, and he's sitting on my bunk, and he's in his underwear, and I'm in my underwear, and he's like, "Let's play hangman." And I go, "John, I'm a terrible, this kind of thing, but all right." And he goes, "I have 3 personalities." And I bought him a toothbrush, and I bought him candy, and I had money. I was, he was poor, and I was from a family that could afford commissary. And I kept telling him, "John, you have the little piece of a toothbrush is this big because they cut the handle off so you can't make a shank." And I kept telling him, "John, you're using the blue toothbrush is mine. The yellow one is yours." And I keep trying to tell him, "Stop using my toothbrush." And he says to me, "I have 3 personalities." Like, "Oh, really?" And we're playing hangman. I go, "What are they?" He goes, "Well, there's Good John." I go, "All right." He goes, "There's Little John." I go, "I guess Little John's playing hangman." I go, "John, what's the 3rd one?" And he turns to me, his eyes curl up, and he goes, "Bad John." And I'm thinking, I'm locked in a cell with a 6'3"
Thorazine.
Yeah, who beat up 5 cops and who's not on his medication because he's been trading it for sides and candy and stuff. And I'm thinking, oh, great, I'm locked up with Bad John. But going back to your story, because my story's been told.
Where was I?
Well, we were talking about your friend was murdered, and so now you're going to try. You've been trying to do escapes. Tell us about how you pull off the escape.
So I knew once my sentence was official, that the tastic that I've been waiting fucking 4 years for is official. Announced from Ankara. It was officially the same judge who sentenced me to 4 years and 2 months 4 years ago, was forced by the High Court in Ankara to reject the sentence and to resentence me. He literally did this in the courtroom. He said, "Kalepshe," meaning handcuffs. My hands are tied. He said, "I wish I retired before I was forced to enter the sentence," which I love hearing this because I can speak Turkish pretty good by that. But
the judge say you probably speak Turkish pretty good now. Yeah. So at this point, you're 27 years old, 28 years old, right?
Yeah, 23 to 28 when I escaped. Right. But the judge tells me this, and then he sentenced me to life in prison, muhabet, which is what my sentence was, life. But he had the prerogative to lower life to 30 years, which he did. Oh. Thank you, I guess. But my official sentence is muhabet, which is life. So he lowered it. But what that did was it got my tastic. And once a prisoner gets a tastic, there's a whole bunch of legal avenues that are available to you now that you're legally in the system. It took me 4 fucking years, but now I've got my tastic. And when you get your tastic, you're allowed to choose other prisons in Turkey if you want to go to them. Obviously, you have to ask and apply, and maybe they'll do it. Of course, depending upon what the prison is, depending upon what, if you have had any bad stuff, if you shanked anybody recently, they won't let you do. But, they told me they'll never send you to Imrali. It was an island 26 kilometers, off the coast in the Sea of Marmara, south of Istanbul. So you got Istanbul right here in the corner of Asia and Europe, and then it opens out to a big sea, and then it goes down to the Dardanelles down there. Well, there's an island out there called Imrali. It's a prison island. They really had not too many prisoners there. It was sort of if you got a good behavior time, or if you got somebody in the government who knows and can maybe slip somebody a little money here, because it's an island prison. We work, you got to work, but it's an island. There's boats coming in. There's the sea here. We get locked down at night, and there's guards with guns walking around. But during the day, we're out working. I'm pulling strawberries off a line and eating a fucking million strawberries the first day. I'm working there, but
it's not Alcatraz like an island. It's
no, not at all.
Island.
It's why I wanted to go there, because it's a better place to be.
Yeah.
This is my story to the Turks, my story to anybody else who asks, which is the American Council is working on bringing me home to America, which sounds very logical. And every Turk in the prisons in Turkey would know, the Americans can do that. They tried everything. Turkey's not doing any favors, especially for a drug smuggler. If I'm a senator's son, I'm no senator's son, but it gave me a nice cover for being why I'm on this island, is because I'm waiting for the American government to take me home. So I'm kind of chill there. And I am chill there. Because all I'm doing is working. I worked in a canning factory. I'd stack stuff. Mostly I'd had a job. Boats would come over from the mainland bringing fruit and produce, and we would unload the boat, those kilos things, and load on the canned goods, because, again, there was a canning factory here. Prison was very, very cheap labor. And we'd load them on. I'm lifting cans and sacks, and I'm getting fucking strong, and I'm getting healthy, and I'm focusing on the fact that 26 kilometers away is the mainland of Turkey. And I am so ready to, I thought for a while to try and swim it. Again, I'm a real good swimmer. I was a lifeguard. I was an ocean surfer, ocean lifeguard, but 26 kilometers, that's a real long
17 miles, right? 18
miles. Yes, especially after 5 years in prison. But again, I'm desperate, and I'm looking at the fucking shoreline of Asia Minor right out there. So it was a good place to be, still locked down at night, little bunk beds, metal bunk beds, and still all these scuzzy Turkish prisoners around me and all that stuff. And it still smelled bad, but none of that bothers me. After a while,
air,
none of that bothers me at all. But I knew
Ocean.
I'm waiting for the timing because I know, because one of these days, one of the first days I was there, I'm climbing a little hill above the village. Again, it's an island, and it's like a big horseshoe-shaped island, and the village is here, and then the
Yeah.
legs of the island go out, and there's a couple of docks where the boats from the mainland, they come over and dock and then unload and shit. And I climb up this little hill above behind the village, and I'm sitting on the grave of former President Menderes, who was deposed by the army back in 1961 or something, hung and buried right here beneath me. This is I'm sitting on his grave on the island of Imrale, where he was hung, and I'm looking out at the sea, and I can see in the distance, I can see way the Asian mainland over there, Asia Minor. I can see far off. There's a storm coming, and the sea is whipping up, and the sea is starting to rock, and all the boats, all of the early boats from the mainland have come there. They're all rocking and bobbing, and some of them are anchoring. These boats, they come, they do their business, they leave. They're not allowed to be on the island. This is a prison island at night, but I can see they're going to be here tonight because of the fucking storm, and each boat has a little wooden dinghy, a little rowboat tied on behind.
In the back, yeah, in the stern.
That's it. So I waited for the right timing. It took another couple of days for things to figure up, and then I could see there was a storm coming. And I wrote all those letters that I wrote. I'll get back. All those letters that I wrote home that I used in my first book, Midnight Express, and I used them. I put all those letters in cardboard boxes after I finished the book, Midnight Express, back in 1970 or whenever it was, 75, excuse me, after I got home. I put all those letters in cardboard boxes for 25 years up in the attic. At one point, I had them all out on the curb for the garbage to pick up. My wife came and made me carry all of them back in. And I told this story to my lawyer and friend, Michael Donaldson, who said, "What letters?" I said, "These moldy fucking letters." Let me read a few. I said, "No, you don't." Let me read a few. He started to read them, and he called me. He said, "You need to take each one of these letters, annotate them, because they're all messy and falling apart. Annotate them. Do not change a single fucking word." And that became the really hard part, because to read what I thought I knew about life, so young and foolish and desperate, 20 years later, like this. But I put them all down, and it was very emotionally. I made the book, Midnight Express Letters. It was a very emotional experience to get them all done.
So,
but it was good. So wait. Yeah. This book, Midnight Express Letters, from a Turkish prison, 1970 to 75. This book came out about 20 years ago. It was out. We played. We did some stuff. Boom. About 4 months ago, we were talking, and my wife said, "Why don't we do?" Because she's my editor and publisher. Tough to have your wife as your publisher and editor sometimes. But it's the best, because you know that her heart is in the right place. But now you got to argue about what you got to argue about. But she's all there. We've been married for 45 years. But she said, "Let's do that." So now I've got the letters, and I'm going to do an audiobook.
I bought it.
Well, you got my audiobook. It's the Midnight Express Letters from a Turkish prison, 1970, 1979. That's my
book. We're going to put a link up to the audiobook and everything.
Oh, good.
But I was going to tell you something earlier. I want to just go back to the stories about me writing letters home. So when I got home, I got all my letters back. People were handing me the letters. And when I was writing my book, and I wondered if you feel the same way, it's funny how people go, "How do you remember? How do you know?" I go, "Well, I remember writing the book, and it said I described the inside of the jail, how many cells, how many food, And when I read the letters while I was reading, after I'd finished that part of the book, I go, my God, I wrote the exact same thing in the letters 34 years ago that I wrote in the book. I mean, people say, "Well, how would you remember all this?" Well, I saved everything like you did. I saved every letter. I saved everything. I have a cup that somebody made me in jail because there was nothing to drink out of. So they took a Pepsi can, ran it on the bars, and turned it into a drinking cup. But I have that, and I have it on my desk as a pencil holder. Nobody knows that Pepsi can is really the cup from jail. But I had the same experience. The letters matched the book, and I go, because the trauma, you don't forget. You either bury it or you don't. So tell me more about how you got out of jail, the escape. And then I want to go into detail about your movie and your book now out and all that stuff, because I want the listeners to hang up on this show and go buy the books and see
Good.
the movie
I
and
want
learn who
to.
you are.
I want to just finish the letters part because you just mentioned
Yeah,
the same thing
please.
about the first time you go to it. It was 20 years that since I wrote the book, wrote the letters book, and then I came back. Now I have to vocally read what I wrote there, and it instantly these words sucked me right back into the kid I used to be 23 years ago. And I was totally overwhelmed by everything. It was a very difficult job to do, is to keep recording, because emotionally it was so powerful.
Yeah.
I could smell the bed. I could feel the metal bunk, I mean, a wooden bunk underneath me. I could hear the sounds in my ears. It was like, holy fuck. I had to like really pull back to try and get a little bit objective, because, you know, you're writing a book, you're objective, whatever. You got your stuff, but it's a book. It was meant to be written. This was never meant to be a book. This was just letters that could get out past the bars where I couldn't go, but they were so emotional.
Did you find when you were hold on, when you were doing the audible book, did you find yourself sometimes having to, like I did it, I'd start to break up a little bit and go, oh.
Totally. I had to keep stopping. I had a young kid who was working for me, trying to put this together. You know, he does the audio stuff.
Same.
And and like, you know, I kept apologizing to him because there was some of the letters I couldn't get through.
Yeah.
You know, some of the stuff to my mom, I can barely do it now. I couldn't get through these things. We had a bunch. I had to do it. It took a lot longer than it should have. I've got other books that I've done, the audiobooks. I'm going to do more. But again, they're letters that I wrote. They're emotional, but not like these. These were just, they caught places that I didn't even know still were there. You know, like stuff
you're still alive. So
there you go. That's what I keep thinking. I'm still here. I'm still alive. Yeah. I'm sorry. So you wanted something else. What was it?
No, I was going to ask you about when you got so you finally decided 17 miles in the open ocean in a small rowboat that's not for the faint of heart. You had to know that you were either going to escape or die trying.
I was very desperate, and desperate men do desperate things. And I knew if I could just get off this island, and I'm a swimmer and I see it and I got a rowboat, if I can get to the mainland, I'll make my way back. What I wanted to get to was Greece, because I knew, you know, Greeks and the Turks have been enemies for 1,000 years. I knew if I could swim across, I had maps. I knew my layout. There's a river that comes down from Bulgaria that separates Turkey from Greece. I knew if I could swim across that river and get to Greece, I was free. So that's all I'm thinking about. I'm out in the rowboat and I'm rowing. When I first left the island, so it's a horseshoe-shaped island. I'm heading this way. I've got a little dinghy. I swam out to the boats were there. They were all angled. I swam out to the boat. I pulled myself over the side of one little dinghy and kind of collapsed in the bottom. And I'm breathing and trying to catch my breath. And I've got this knife that is stolen from the canning factory, of course. And I'm cutting the rope that cuts the dinghy to the boat, and it's swaying and pulling like this. And the rope doesn't want to cut. I'm ready to gnaw the fuck apart of my teeth. I'm just so jacked up here. I'm ready. The rope breaks. The dinghy swirls away back towards the rocks and the guards with the guns. And I grab the oars and realize they don't have oarlocks on a Turkish dinghy. They just have this big pretzel of rope around an oar and a peg of wood. And somehow you put the rope here. I'm trying to figure this out. I'm rocking back and forth. The prison's there, but I get it together and slow it down. And the oars slowly stop me from going towards the rocks. And I start moving out through the other boats, away from the prison. I'm looking at the lights of the prison right here and I'm rowing and I'm stroking and I'm stroking and I'm rowing. I could row 1,000 fucking miles. I mean, I'm 28 years old. I am so fit. I've been carrying sacks and I am so focused. I'm ready. Nothing's going to stop me. And I'm rowing and I'm rowing and pulling. And I look up and I'm past the last of the boats and I'm out into the open sea. And I almost lose a fucking paddle, but I'm free. For the first time in 5 years,
Can you see the mainland you're rowing to yet?
Well, not at night because there was a storm and blowing, but during the day, you can see 26 kilometers. I see it's the Asia Minor mainland. And during the day, I could see it here, depending on the weather factors. But I knew where it was. I knew Again, I got maps. I know the current is sweeping down from this way, which is why I have to pull harder on my right oar to correct course, because the current is pushing me down. If I get too far down here, I'm going to head out past, because the mainland goes like this.
And you're going to head out to sea.
I'm going to get swept down to the Dardanelles. I don't want to be out in the open sea any more than I already have been. But I'm rowing 26 kilometers to hit the beach, because I know if I can get to the beach here, it's called Mudanya. Wow, there's a flash. Mudanya is a little tiny town that eventually I made it through the night, and the storm is blowing, and I'm rowing, and I'm just kind of exhausted, but again, driven. I row 1,000 miles. I'm just so ready, and I'm so ready to go. At one point, I'm rowing and stroking, and suddenly I feel like I'm on the back of this rising whale. These big swells start rolling up under me. Now, I'm scared out of my mind, but way off in the distance, I think I can see tiny red blinking lights, and I head towards them, and I'm rowing, and I'm rowing. So, and I'm just falling asleep, and I'm pulling and stroking. The next thing I know, the boat scrapes up on some sand, and a wave lifts it. We scrape up, and I look up to the pale dawning light, and I see this wild, rugged coastline. It's the coastline of Asia Minor, and I go, I made it. I actually jumped.
How long did it take? How long were you out there?
Most of the night. I left, let me see, night check there was 9. So it was after night, because I'd arranged to get beyond the night bed check. I arranged it by making friends with one of the big kapadai, one of the badasses, who these guys, every night after people get locked down at night, everybody's locked up. But these guys, they go to the accounting shed, where, you know, 2 nerdy guys with adding machines are toting up all the day's canning profits and stuff. And these guys, they sit down and they smoke joints and they drink Rocky and they play dominoes. And these are the gangster prisoners. And you know how gangster prisoners work. They live like kings in jail. Well, these were these guys. I made friends with the king gangster prisoner, and I speak good Turkish. And he arranged for the head guard at my cell block for 9 o'clock after the bed check is coming that Willie, it was my name in jail, Willie is okay. He don't bother him. And the guard is like, yes, sir. So he says, don't worry. He tells me, don't worry about that fucking guard. I say, he said, he's not going to say anything. So I know once I get here, I tell the guys, I don't feel so good. Have some hash. No, like, hey, have some Rocky. No, thanks. I just got to go back to the cell block and rest. But instead of going back to the cell block where the guard is waiting in the rain to block the last of the people, let me in, I head down to the cobblestone road to the harbor, and underneath this wooden overhang, I climb up into the lip of this big empty concrete vat used to hold tomato paste. It's empty now. And I drop down into the bottom, and I'm huddled up in the bottom of this vat, and I'm listening, watching. I want to be sure, no other prisoners around. And, there's guards that patrol the beach, even if it's raining. There's guards out here somewhere. I know that. So I have to be real careful about getting from this vat down to the water. And I start to put my leg up on the top of it, and I hear a noise. And I drop down to the bottom, and I hear cobblestone noise. It's a guard walking the beach, the rocky stone beach. And I hear it, and it's getting louder and getting louder. And suddenly I see a match flare, and I hear he's lighting a cigarette. He's underneath the edge of the overhang out of the rain. And I can smell the smoke. He's standing right on the other side of the fucking wall. I'm thinking, stone, inanimate object, no human vibrations. And this guy smokes his butt, and then I hear his feet on the cobbles, and he's finishing his rounds. And I came up on the thing, and I dropped down onto the wet sand, and I crawl on my belly down towards the water. And they have searchlights on the end of the piers out here, and the searchlight walks its way down the beach like that. I dropped down, and I'm on the ground. I got this my lucky hat. Couldn't have been so lucky. I had it when I was busted, but I still got it. And I'm face down in the mud. And I get to the water, and I just slide right into these wet waves. Again, I'm a swimmer. I'm not worried about if I'm in the water, I'm good. And
because you had to swim from the mainland to the boat.
Yeah. From the beach mainland.
Swim.
And it's a swim. But it's an easy swim for me. Yeah, I'm a swimmer, so I get out there and I swim out through these things, and I drop into the boat, and I cut the rope, and the dinghy starts, and then I'm rowing, and I get to the mainland. What
happens when you get to the mainland?
When I get to the mainland, I started running up the beach, north up the beach, because I knew Mudany's here, and there's actually another smaller town somewhere. But I know from my map again, I need to get further down the beach, or actually north, further up the beach, and catch a little jitney bus or whatever they have, and make my way to Bursa, which was a bigger town up the coast, up the mountain, to Bursa, Turkey. Yeah.
So you're not in prison, like, I'm not.
We don't have any outfits in jail. Everybody in prison wears their own clothes.
Right. The first jail I was in, if your parents or family didn't bring you clothes, you didn't have clothes. Like, you have to wash. There's no wash, no laundry. The second one, as I always joke around, if the hospital scrubs, if you're getting surgery and your doctor shows up in orange scrubs, try to get up and run. He's not a doctor, but with numbers on him.
But done in jail.
You're in. Lucky for you, you're in civilian clothes.
Yes, very much so. So I was able to make my way from the beach to this little town, and then I talked to this driver, and for 12 lira, he would drive me up the.
So you had some money.
Oh yeah, I had money. I've had money in my back pocket.
All this.
Totally, I planned this.
You saved your money.
Every place and every option of this plan, I tried to have at least an A, B, and a C. So if this didn't happen, I'd do C, and that would mean. So I had all these things planned out. I don't know how they would have worked, because I was just so fucking lucky. Once I started running,
smuggler, if you hadn't done such a small smuggle, you should have been with me or Bruce or some of the big guys.
I tell Bruce all the time I wasn't ambitious enough. I was taking 2 kilos at a time. Right. I should have had you guys with this big boat. I needed my wife. I needed to be married to my wife then. She'd have been much more ambitious as a smuggler. I know. I hear the stories from Bruce too. God damn, little kilo. But I get to the beach. I take the thing up. I get to Bursa, and from Bursa, I catch a bus to Istanbul, which takes me up and along the coast of Asia Minor, and then I'm on the high arcing span of the Yenikopru Bridge, the dark water of the Bosphorus rushing under me, crossing from Asia back to Europe. And I go to a little hotel where a former prison friend of mine, a guy named Wolfgang, has been working, and he speaks great Turkish. He's become a Muslim, and he's like assistant manager. And this guy owes me. I mean, sometimes things accrue in jail. People owe you, or you owe them. Yep. People don't always pay them off. Some of them just leave you hanging there. I just knew if I could get to this hotel, he'd pay me off. I saved him from a really bad beating one time. He would hide me. So I get to the hotel, and the little hotel manager says, "Oh, Wolfgang, no, you just missed him. He left yesterday, Afghanistan." It's like, no, he's not gone. This is the end of my plan. I had backup plans, but I'm so freaked out because I want to just collapse on the ground and cry. He's gone to Afghanistan. What am I going to do now? I'm out wandering the street. I know what my plan B is. My plan B is to somehow make it to the Greek border, and one way or the other get across. So I'm wandering the streets, kind of numbed and dazed and freaked out, but so blown away by smells and women and dogs and hair and perfume and life, fucking life going on around. I'm thinking, and then it's like, wait a second. What am I doing? Oh, she's looking at a little dog. Oh, look at that girl. It was bizarre. It was like tripping. I used to do a lot of acid back in the day. It was like full on tripping, but I was not tripping. I was just there in the moment doing this, thinking, I just need to get to the Greek border. I found a little shitty hotel right down by the waterfront. And I told the guy I needed a room for the night, and he kind of like, sleazy hotel. He kind of like looked at me. He said, "Passport?" I said, I lost it. He said, "Luggage?" I said, no, my passport was in my luggage. I lost it. He looked at me. 200 lira. It was like about twice or 3 times what the normal price would be. Right. But I'm happy to pay him. And I climb up these little stairs up to the top, and I'm in this little flea bag room. Actually, before I even came in, while I was on the street watching women, dogs, and hair. I got fucking blonde hair and a blonde mustache. I went to a drugstore and bought some Sia Renkboya, which is black hair dye. Then I found a little hotel. Now I'm up on the top, and I take this gooey stuff out. It smells like cat piss, and I rub it in this stuff, and now I got this lank black hair. I got a mustache, a big, like you had. It was a big blonde mustache. I put if the hair at least was reasonable black hair. This looked like a big chunk of fucking licorice on my upper lip. I went back out. I bought a razor. It looked so bad, I shaved it off. Now I got this lank black hair and this kind of raw space under my nose outlined in black. I was a total mess. But, It worked. I collapsed into bed, exhausted, ready to literally jump out the window at the sound of footsteps on the
Right.
stairs. That's how
Right.
freaked I am.
Yeah.
But dawn comes, and I wake. I'm down at the bus station, and I catch a bus to Edirne, which is a little border town, ancient, antique border town, couple of 100 kilometers west on the Maritsa River, where I need to get across. So I know I need to get to that. So I buy a ticket on the bus, and I'm on the bus, and we're riding, and we get out of Istanbul a little bit, and the bus stops, pulls over, and a Turkish cop with a little machine gun steps on and stares down the aisle.
Oh, you're gonna be.
I stopped breathing. My fucking heart stopped beating. He turns to the driver, checks his papers, tips his helmet with his gun, steps off. The bus starts to move. My heart starts to beat.
Oh,
We get
God.
to we. That's what I said. Oh my God! I can't deal with this anymore. I got to get out of here. We get to Edirne town, and I stop at the bus lets me out, and I find a kind of a sleazy taxi stand, and I find an old beat up blue Buick and a long haired Turkish kid driving it. And I tell him some bullshit story about being with some friends of mine south of here near the river. And we've been at a campground and and I lost them. Can you drive me to the campground by the river? The kid looks at me and says, he wants to know where I learned Turkish. I tell him in jail in Istanbul. He said, for hashish? I said, yeah. You want to buy some hashish? No, I don't want any hashish.
No.
I just need to get to the campground. So we drive out of town, and we're down in the road winds and some trees, and we stop at the little village and at a bus stand. The kid yells out for people for directions to the campground. And I look, there's a guy holding a big newspaper, wide open. The whole side of it is this big, I've got a photo of it somewhere, this big hand-painted bunch of colors, pictures of this blonde-haired, muscle-bound, I should look like this, muscle-bound with a big knife cutting a rope on a dinghy in a stormy sea. It's like,
are you kidding me?
Holy shit. I tell the kid, go. And he drives. I mean, I'm on the front page of their newspaper.
Are you kidding me?
No, I've got the picture. I'll show you the picture. So I couldn't believe it. So we drive a little further, and he stops, and he yells up to some people that there's a little wooden taverna up on the hill for directions. And this big guy with a blue uniform and a tie hanging open and a beer bottle in his hand saunters down the steps. He's an off-duty cop. He leans in the window. I can smell the beer on his breath. He says, no fucking campground here. And I'm telling the kid, go. So we drive a little ways, and finally the road peters out, becomes dirt. The kid stops. He won't go any further. It'll hurt his car. I offer him more money. I said, I know the campground is just right down here a little bit. So we drive a little ways, and he stops. It's at a cornfield. He won't go any further. It'll hurt his car. I get out and stand on the front bumper of his car, and I'm looking west at the crimson sun setting behind these dark rolling hills. And I know somewhere down there is the river and the border between Turkey and Greece. And Greece is freedom. So I spent most of that night making my way. Actually, the kid stopped, and I gave him the last of my Turkish money. I want to keep some American, but I gave him the last of my Turkish money, and I offer him Allah Kudasın, like God be with you, God strengthen you, or something like that. And he returns, like phrases, and he returns Allah Kudasın. And then he actually tries to talk me out of it. He says, no good, you here alone, night, danger. It's like, thanks, I get it. Yeah, but he thanked me because I offered him Allah Kudasın. So it was polite enough. So I waited till the sun fucking went down, and the little blue stars pierce the black sky, and I start walking over these rolling hills. I can see off in the distance the flashing lights flashing on and off on these hilltops. This is a real tough Turkish Greek border right here that I'm coming to, and there's guards out there, and I know from the map I need to get down a certain way. That's sort of a marshland. After the end of Edirne and the houses, there's like this marshy, swampy place near the river, and I know that's where I need to get to, because that's where I'm going to get across and swim it. And I made my way through the woods, and it was, walking in the night, and it's dark, and I thought I see some metal off in the distance, and I head that way, and it's tanks crouched down in the fucking woods. I head away from the tanks. Real fucking tanks on the border.
Turkish border
Turkish
tanks on the border,
yeah. Sitting like these big squat monsters, no noise, nothing. Because I caught the glint of something. Look. And I'm back through the woods, and I get closer, and I go to the bushes and stuff. But the ground starts to get muddy. Muddy is good. And I start to hear running water, and I follow the sound, and branches are whacking me. And then suddenly branches part, and there's this black flowing river right in front of me. And I wade right in, up to my knees, up to my waist. I'm getting ready to swim, and suddenly the water goes down, and I'm on a little riverbank, and I made it across. But it just can't be that easy. And it's not. I'm on a little narrow island just off the coast. I part some big bushes. There's the real river flowing down the starlight from the Bulgarian mountains to the Aegean Sea. And I know on the other side of that river, freedom.
How big is the river?
A couple of 100 kilometers. I don't care how big it is. I'm a fucking swimmer. I'm swimming for freedom. I swim 1,000 miles. I didn't care. The river didn't bother me. Guards shooting me from one side or the other. That's what bothered me. Yeah. I had to be quiet in the water. I sat on the riverbank and I picked stickers out of my feet and kind of caught my breath and just felt what was going on. And I never felt so alive in my life. I had to keep calming myself down. Like, don't get revved up and make a mistake. Don't do something stupid. And it's hard because when I get revved up, I do stuff stupid. And I'm so ready to do anything. I just need to get across that river. But I calmed down and I started. And once I got into the water, it swept me south. And I'm breaststroking across it, not wanting to make noise. And it's fuck that. Now I'm swimming and swimming. And my knee hits a rock. And the river grabs me and I find the bottom and I brace against the current and drag myself up onto the riverbank on the other side. I collapse on this muddy riverbank, staring up at the stars. And this wild, giddy burst of joy leaps up out of me. I know, fuck. This is 60 years ago and it still flips me out. Now I'm wandering. Yeah. I'm wandering in the woods, wet, cold, hungry. Still not certain where I am, not wanting to go up to the first guy and have him be a Turkish border guard because the river, I know the river had shifted over the years as rivers tend to. And all the prison info that I heard about this thing, here's the town. If it gets further enough south, you're going to be, I learned I'm asking everybody who knows anything. And I'm figuring 90% of this is bullshit because they don't know any more than I do. But exactly. I'm reading and I'm talking to people who might know stuff. And I do, if I could get across here. And I wandered through the woods and I was in the woody places. My feet, actually, at one point, I forgot. At one point on the other side of the river, I heard dogs barking. That freaked me out.
Think it's the guards.
Dogs. Jesus Christ, dogs. I ripped off my stinky old sneakers and socks. I buried them at the base of this tree, thinking, smell these, you fucking dogs. Get your noses blown out. I climb up the tree, I shinny out of the ledge, I drop down, and I scurry away. But of course, now my feet are getting all chewed up. But I don't care. I just don't fucking care. I'm so close. And I kept moving. And once I got into Greece, not knowing it's Greece, I wandered in the woods. And then I came to this little dirt road. And I know I shouldn't be on it, but it feels so good on my fucking battered feet. And I think I see a little dark farmhouse. And dogs come barking, chasing me. And I run ahead of the dogs. And on this little road, I know I'm going to get back in the woods just past this little wooden kiosk. I don't even see it, like a little kiosk. And I'll bayonet slashes down in front of me. And this guy yells something, and I'm frozen. That's what you do when they put a bayonet in your face, like. And this guy yells something. A bayonet. And he yells something. And that's what I said. Oh, what? And I don't understand him. And he yelled again, and I realized I don't understand him. And that's great. Turkish. That means he's speaking Greek. That's great. Yeah. I collapse on the ground. There's shit-eating grin all over my dirty face. The guy's blowing a whistle. More soldiers with flashlights coming. They surround me with their flashlights, and this captain guy sticks a pistol in the light. He said, "Who are you? Who are you?" I tell him, "I'm an American. I just escaped from Turkey." But I know now, fuck, I'm in Greece. The Greeks are going to love me. They're never sending me back. First morning, the Greek military intelligence guy comes in to question me, speaks a terrific English. He got these big bushy eyebrows, these piercing eyes. He starts asking me all these questions. It's like, wait, stop. People have been pushing me around, telling me what to do for 5 fucking years. I know my rights. I'm an American citizen. I demand to see the American consul. What does he say? He blows some smoke, bings the cigarette off my head. He said, "You know what your rights are, kid? We find you coming out of a military zone, totally restricted. You have no passport. You have no shoes and socks. We could take you out in the woods and shoot you. Nobody know the difference. We could take you across the river and throw you back to the Turks. Or you can shut up, cooperate.
God.
And we send you home." It's like, well, what do you want to know? The guy asked me about the insignia on the uniforms of the soldiers on Raleigh and about the radar base on the island and about where I saw these tanks in the woods. How secret can this shit be if I know about it? So he takes out this topographical map and I'm looking and I'm seeing, here's where I think I did this. Here's where I crossed the river. He said, you're a lucky man, William. I said, yeah, I know. He says, no, you don't know. We think all this land, mined.
Oh, fuck.
Mind. When I got home, my old grandma used to heard this story, and she said she used to go to bingo all the time. And she said, "I used to light candles at the church for you, and each one of those candles I lit was one of those bombs in the ground. That's why you didn't step on it." And till the day she died, I kept telling her, "Keep lighting those candles, Granny." Now that I'm saying that, my mother, yeah,
you have unbelievable, unbelievable. So now they send you get home and you reacquaint with your family.
yeah.
And I just want to end the show because I want to do it. Listen, you and I could talk forever. And
I apologize to all of your listeners for being so verbose, and I just get crazy and run away with stuff like this.
No. I apologize to my listeners for interrupting you to tell my silly stories.
Oh, I love hearing you. I read your book. I know the shit you've been through.
You've been very kind about it. Thank you.
Well, that's why I also like talking to you, because when I talk to someone who's been there, they understand stuff. And, no offense to anybody else, but if they haven't been really in jail, there's so much that needs to be like filled in background that I don't need to fill in with you because you've been there. Anyway.
I've heard that that's one of the things I think I bring when I'm talking to other drug people like us in that world, is that I've been there. It's like even when I talk to Bruce or other smugglers, I know how much fuel it took, how far it was, what jail was like, what the experience of copping in a foreign country and all that stuff.
I love Bruce,
by the way. You, how did your family, I mean, you got off the plane, you were adored. I mean, your family must have been ecstatic to get you home. And I will go back to the original experience of seeing your movie for the first time, and how powerful it was. The acting, wasn't obviously and the writing and the story.
I was very lucky. I'm the least objective of viewers. Obviously, they did some things I didn't like. Oliver Stone and I have some issue, different the way they did the escapes, there's attitudes to the Turk. That's all. I understand that, but they made an incredible film, and I'm so lucky because I wrote the book. I got off the plane 2 days later. I was writing it. That's what I did. That's why I went to college. That's why I went on the road. I wrote the book, and the book wasn't even half finished when suddenly it got sold to Columbia Pictures, and they were taking me to Hollywood to talk about movies. Like, I've been in jail for 5 years. How bizarre is this? But it was good. But I also knew they're going to make a movie. My agent, I said, suppose I don't like the script that they give. He said, you sign that paper, you're done. I say, there's a clause here that says, if I don't like it, he said, there's a little clause in the bottom that says, if you don't like what they present us, you can have maybe have your name taken off the credits. He said, but they're selling the fucking picture and your name.
Yeah.
They got lawyers picking their noses, waiting for a lawsuit like that to you're not going to be, you sign the paper, you're done. I said, I'm thrilled to sign this paper. Again, I've been in jail. I'm thrilled to sign it. Then I got lucky. Oliver Stone wrote a brilliant screenplay. Problems of me, it's beside the point. And then I had Alan Parker, who's an amazing director, and Brad Davis put his heart and soul into this film. I mean, really made it happen. So I was a very lucky guy. And they premiered it in 1978 at the Cannes Film Festival, where I met my wife, the woman where I'm still married to today at the Cannes Festival. She came up and asked me to dance, and we've been together ever since.
So you mentioned something.
I'm such a lucky.
I'm going to tell you something that, you and I have had not similar, but we've had a harder life than some people. Self-imposed, no doubt.
Yeah, right.
I mean, I couldn't control the fact that I lost my grandfather and my father at a young age. In about a year and a half, my grandfather died, who was so important to me. My father died, and then my house burned down. A bad stretch. But people say to me, I always say, no regrets. I can never go back. And even the losses I've had in my life, and there have been more than that, but those are the most impactful. Sure. I wouldn't change anything because I wouldn't be the man I am. Life is the sum of our experiences. And like you said earlier, which was, I got it, you wouldn't trade the Turkish prison. You wouldn't trade, I mean, you can't go backwards. You can't have regrets. People ask me, do you regret? I can't regret. There's some things that I wish I had done differently maybe in my life. And I think you and I are a lot alike, where I never had a plan. I've always been reactive, not proactive.
Me too.
Hey, that sounds good. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Hey, you want to smuggle, 1,400 pounds out? Yeah, let's do it. But I'll take where I'm at today. And how do you feel about that?
I'm thrilled to be where I am at now. My wife still again, I jokingly say, but I mean it. I'm healthy. I'm free. Nobody's beating my feet with a stick. And my wife still loves me. Everything else is gravy. Sometimes it's hot gravy. Sometimes it's cold gravy, but it's gravy. Yeah. And I'm happy that it happened. I wish I could have not caused all the pain to my family.
Yeah.
That was the worst part of jail.
But we gotta.
We all got through.
Yeah, every day you play. I always say every day you play the hand that's dealt to you.
There you go.
Then the next day you get up, you go to bed. Some people have asked me, well, how did you? One of the most prolific things in my life was in the chapter 10 of my book, Spanish Fort, as a 13 or 14-year-old kid on a bicycle, watching the poor people picnicking being beat to death by a mob of white.
I read that.
Yeah, and I always say, they say, what was that? I go, it's a stop in time. I have to keep clicking. The clock keeps ticking. I can't sit there. And I go back to Spanish Fort and I walk those fields. It's a funny story. I've been back to New Orleans so many times. About a year or two ago, I went back with my wife and my friend Jack, who's known me since I was 12. We walked. I've driven by Spanish Fort 100 times. I got out of the car and I walked the grass that had happened on. And I stood in the field and I looked at the fort. And for the first time, because I wrote the book, I was able to open up my emotions and not just drive by it and close my, So the new book out is the one I just bought, which I haven't listened to yet, is Letters from the Midnight Express. Or what's the exact title?
The Midnight Express Letters from a Turkish Prison, 1970 to 1975. The Midnight Express Letters. And it's an audiobook. So you'll hear me babbling on that, like I'm babbling right here.
Yeah. And you wrote it and read it yourself, which I think is so important. I did my book myself. You got to hear the authors. You got to hear the pain from the person.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I'm going to tell all my listeners and watchers that we're going to put information links to, we're going to put some pictures of, obviously, of the movie and some of that, and the links to the books. And I advise everybody to watch the movie, to read the book, to read the new book, and just to really come back.
I much appreciate it. If you could do, while you're going to post anything, post billyhayes.com, because that's the website. Again, I can barely open my emails, but that's my producer. Seriously, my producer put that up. So anybody who wants to know anything or see any of my book, I got 4 books, or any of the movies, they got clips of some of the play that I've been doing. So if they're interested in hearing more of my strange tale, go to billyhayes.com and you can get whatever you like.
That's what we're going to do. And I can't tell you, for me to be able, like when we first started connecting through Bruce Perlowin, who's the king of pot, and that's a phenomenal human being. I do too. I will tell you to meet Billy Hayes, to talk to you on the phone. I wish, I wish we were walking down Hollywood Boardwalk together later tonight, but we'll be back.
Inshallah, one of these days we'll do a doob up and we'll talk some more.
Well, don't forget, Bruce is setting up that in June 21st, I think it is, of next year. We're all going to be in the Arizona desert, hanging out with all the old smugglers and runners, and we're going to have a festival on Bruce. So
I've been in that desert with him. It's very cool out there. I mean, it's very hot out there, but it's very cool out there.
Well, I was going to say, I hope you have an air-conditioned space for me.
Very hot, but it's such a cool place.
Thank you again for coming.
Thank you, my friend.
I got a chance to meet you. I
appreciate you giving me a chance to meet and talk with your friends and go from there. And this will not be the first time we talk.
No, not at all. Listen, I'm going to ask you, just so you know. Not the last I was going to say. When we get done, stay with me, because you have to stay on for the show to download. So I'm going to end the recording now, and then we're going to stay together a couple